This episode of Watch Out for Fireballs is brought to you by our patrons. If you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, you too can join them. Specifically, it's brought to you by Jack, who we personally want to thank for finally kicking us in the balls to play this game, which is great. This is our first part of our two-parter, possibly three-parter. We'll find out about Disco Elysium. So enjoy. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs. It is a Games Club podcast.
And this week we are talking about Disco Elysium, which is an RPG developed by Zaum for the PC in 2019.
And some say Elysium, some say Elysium.
Yeah.
And we just had to get that out of the way right up front. You know?
I'm going to say it as both.
Yeah. I'm definitely, I've never heard Elysium until you said it.
Yeah?
Cool. You know, and I don't think it's wrong. I think it's probably likely that I am the one who is wrong.
So,
but it is
I pronounce it that way because whenever people refer to it in the game, they called it that. I naturally want to call it Elysium, and I probably will. But this is the quickest we've ever gone off the rails on a pronunciation, bud.
That's not true. I guarantee we've done it sooner than that. So this is, welcome to August. Mm-hmm. This is, the first of our two-part, episode, on this game that was produced by Jack. So Thank you very much, Jack. I had been personally putting off playing, a game I really thought I would love because I knew we'd do it for the show someday. Mm-hmm. And, it happened.
Yeah. Thanks,
Jack.
Thanks to Jack. And this is amazing. I am really looking forward to talking about this in detail. Because it gets so much right. Yeah.
This is, so retroactively, my game of the year 2019. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'll play something I like more than this year.
Yeah.
That seems very unlikely with what's scheduled. This is so incredibly up my alley that it's, you can name the alley, like after me. Like what if people were just like nakedly inspired by the best video games of all time.
Right.
That also were the video games that I love. And then also, some of my favorite like storytellers and kind of, writing. And then just, the Charlie Kaufman, like there's maybe supernatural shit about, but it's actually has tons of heart.
Yeah.
Tone is, my favorite like tone, or, my favorite kind of tack things take. Like this is so unreasonably up my dick.
Yeah, this is
it's sounding me with pleasure.
Same. I am being reamed out up the sound by just all of that stuff, but also, God, fuck's sake, I'm going to retroactively
Is this the Miami sound machine? Because I've been sounding.
Yeah, it's also specifically my shit because of the nature of the prose here, and also kind of like the philosophical and governmental concepts and political concepts that are being explored and stuff like that, and the things that this is critical of, and the reason the reasoning it gives for being critical. In a very, very humanistic way, speaks specifically to my sensibility.
Yeah. It's real. It's very surreal how hard I vibed with this. And I spent a year with people telling me I would, and I was never, I never got to the what is it, Nier Automata, like every time you tell me I have to play this, I'm going to wait another year.
Right.
Situation with this game, because it's like no, you're right. Like I'm sure you're right, but nobody likes being told to play stuff. Like even if it's well-meaning, or maybe other people do like it. I don't like it. But this ended up being a rare case where the hype was not oversold to me.
Yeah.
And I ended up, and part of it was I came into this with an expectation that was unrealistic because my spoiler filters were not totally up.
Okay.
Where I thought this was going to be kind of more one thing than it ended up being.
It was described very strangely when people talked about it. I felt the same way, that the actual product that I have here, it was not reflected in what people decided to emphasize.
Yeah. Very much. And especially in terms of that kind of tone. Like I was expecting this to be a lot more cold than it is. But I think that like one of the overwhelming feelings I get from this, one of the reasons why this resonated with me so much is that it's like an incredibly warm work. Shades of like Hypnospace, right? Like these kind of things that are surreal and have a detached sense of irony, but at their core are incredibly like feely and soft-hearted, which also describes me on my best days. So like, of course, like I ended up liking this. We should make a note about spoilers though before we continue, because all of this is going to be 100% pure spoiler for this whole game.
Yeah, this game is basically all story. There are going to be mechanics that we talk about here in the generalities at the start, but because we recommend this game so highly, and because I don't know, I would like for your journey with the game to be as similar to mine as possible, you might want to go in without some of the conclusions that I have drawn about, what happens here, right?
Well, not just the story stuff, even the mechanical stuff. Like there are a lot of very delightful surprises that I am glad that I did not know about in advance. So I would recommend, and it's a weird thing that we, podcasting is like the one medium where you constantly tell people not to listen to your show. Like I would recommend though playing the game first, or if you decided you'll never play it, then this, and you like hearing people like stuff, this will be a fun episode for you. But if you think that you might play it, just grab Nabbit and go through.
Yeah. And, at its core, or one of its cores, I guess, this is still a murder mystery. Like you don't find out until the very end who done it, right?
Yeah.
And all of the little revelations along the way that point to that, like you're going to learn about them, and ultimately they're not necessarily like super necessary, or or they don't necessarily spoil like how things actually went down. But still, you want to be able to put those pieces together, yourself along with the characters, right?
Yeah. Even if they ended up being, Disco Elysium's trick, like the thing that a lot of the stuff in the game is kind of set dressing. Like that murder mystery obviously plays into the theme. Yeah. The heavy political emphasis obviously plays into the themes. But I think this game is ultimately more about the same thing that one of its big influences about, which is about like defining yourself in the backdrop of these dramatic human situations. Like what kind of person do you want to be in the face of all of this bigness? Yeah.
How much are you defined by a past that you're not aware of at the start, but is unfolding before you? And how are you shaping yourself in reaction to it?
Yep. With just kind of a different, set of backdrop things that are more, of the time, like a little bit more 2020, a little bit, than other games that kind of take this tact. Yeah. So the basic premise is you play as a police detective who wakes up after this very long bender, and your memory has been obliterated. Ostensibly by drink, could be by other stuff. Again, there are a lot of red herrings, and there's ambiguities in this. But you do not have your memory, or Again, there's more on that later. more on that later, yes. But broadly, as this amnesiac detective, you kind of need to navigate these intricate power dynamics of the neighborhood that the game takes place in. It's a very focused story, at least geographically. Martinez is the name of it. And you're working alongside your partner, the ever-patient Kim Kitsuragi, to solve the murder. Yeah, and we'll talk about Kim as his own kind of bullet point, because it's, incredibly important to the feeling and kind of flow of this game. Here. Ostensibly, like if you just look at a screenshot of this looks like an isometric CRPG. This is a CRPG.
Yeah.
And it's very clear when you play it. One of the biggest influences is Planescape Torment. Depending on what day you ask me, what I think is my favorite video game. Other influences are all of my also favorite games. So it's all like Fallout and Baldur's Gate and stuff. Like
right.
These guys are huge CRPG nerds.
Huge tabletop tabletop game fans.
Yep. Absolutely. And a lot of these ideas came directly from tabletop RPGs. Like if you watch interviews or read interviews with these designers, like you can kind of see like a lot of these things were play tested at the table.
Yes.
There's a huge tabletop feel to this.
Which it makes sense because they're going to be making this into a tabletop system of a sort. Yeah.
Which I'm less excited about than one might think. Like I feel like the steady hand of the high quality of this writing is kind of necessary.
It is
for this.
Yeah, everything needs to be kind of thought through. I don't know how I don't know how it would thrive under the improvisational nature of things that might happen at the table. But yeah, it looks like and plays like Planescape Torment and any of those Infinity Engine games, things that are inspired by those. You're looking down, you click your mouse to run to something or someone, and you click on them to interact with it. And broadly, you are looking for clues and trying to find answers to the game's mysteries, mostly through conversation.
Yeah, tons of conversation. This is there's a dialogue boss battle in this that is like the best dialogue boss battle since First Citizen Lynette. And because of, similar to other games we've like praised on the show, your job and system or rather setup in this game does tons to make gameplay make a kind of sense in a way that will make sense when I finish this paragraph, I guess, of thought. But so the idea is, so you're in The Witcher, right? Like we talked about how your job as a Witcher is what provides the context that kind of makes that game lack a lot of ludonarrative dissonance.
Right.
Your job in this world, your place in this world necessitates adventure and the kind of things you're going to be doing in a way that does not feel artificial ever.
Right.
You're never having that moment of like, fuck, just call the police, or like, fuck, just, like let the army handle this. There's no reason for a group of teenagers to go do this. This is so dumb. It doesn't have that feeling to it because you are that person. What Disco Elysium does is by having your character be an amnesiac, it makes sense for you to ask about just really extremely basic things about the world, which tells you, one, lets you define yourself and your character, which is what I think this game is ultimately about. Yeah. Two, helps explain this absolutely wild alternate history and universe that they made that's incredibly rich and really, really deep. Not always to the game's like benefit. Like there are things that I'm less into about that. But three, also allows you to kind of question some things that the writers want you to question that ordinarily we take as assumptions. So like there are things that are very like, you play as this, and like whenever I talk about being Starman, about stuff like, what is a traffic light? And having somebody like forcing characters in this world to actually explain things that we take for granted in the real world reveals biases and politics behind these things. And having you have like kind of the wisdom of a fool to question some of these things allows for, a lot of this kind of political steez and posture to come through when ordinarily wouldn't. Like it allows you to push past assumptions for things.
Yeah, it gets you like a little bit toward like a complete like Chancey Gardner kind of thing. As you're going through here, and that causes, you questioning small things has you putting together and questioning like bigger things. One of the political points, that is ultimately secondary to what's going on here, but there is a commentary on, police, like what is the role of quote unquote the law? What ought it be? And as you are talking, like just really basic questions about where your authority comes from and kind of stripping you of any of your assumptions or, let's say, any knowledge that you might have brought into the game based on the real world to help you understand exactly how precarious the situation is in the neighborhood that you are, that you are working within. Yeah.
And it's easy to spin that out into real world situations. Like one of the things that I thought would be a harder pill to swallow for this game is like playing as a cop in 2020.
Right.
You know, one of the taglines of this is like, what kind of cop are you? And it's, there's no rah-rah. Like you can actually be a good person and try to do your best and cause definitive good as a police officer in this.
Yes.
But there is absolutely zero jingoism in it because everything is questioned.
Yeah.
You know, like this actually has a lot of like pretty trenchant, like commentary and challenging of assumptions I definitely grew up with police that I'm just now starting to question seriously.
Yeah.
You know, along with the game, which is part of the other reason why this like hit like a tactical sniper bullet.
Yeah.
You know,
in a way, I'm kind of happy that I played it this year as opposed to around the time that it came out. You know, it's not like police got especially worse. You know, everything that we're seeing is still going on here in 2020 world and brain. But it has been so foregrounded for so long under the circumstances that we're living in right now that heightened, you know, that aspect of the game for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's no official combat system in this. Everything is done with skill checks. In the game, there is one combat scene towards the end of the game that is all done through dialogue and skill checks.
Yeah.
Through that, one of the things the developer wants to do is more stuff like that in the next one, and he kind of spitballed some like scenes, like you know, getting into a car crash, like falling off a building, like other action scenes that he could do in this kind of slowed down time, zoomed in thing. And that's one of my favorite scenes in the game. I think this is incredibly good. And there are, elements of this that we've seen, specifically handling non-combat through the same kind of engine, say in like Tides of Numenera. And this is significantly more successful, than that system was at doing the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Specifically because of like how modular this system is and kind of like how many different modifiers can ultimately be thrown in. I think this is taking a huge number of things into account.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you know, you spend most of the game in dialogue. Even when you interact with things, it brings up the dialogue, kind of screen. You know, most of the time you've got 1/2 or 1/3 of your screen dedicated to the scroll of the text, and your options. As you talk with others, and most importantly, a lot of the time yourself.
Yeah. There's an interesting little tidbit in an interview I saw where they talked about that doing that on the right side of the screen rather than in the bottom part of the screen where CRPGs typically do that was partly inspired by Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and trying to get people to read. Like this idea that like a lot of people, you know, people like ostensibly don't like reading. You know, in games, that's conventional wisdom, but actually everyone reads all day long, all the time.
Each of us in a day reads so much more than like a monk in the Middle Ages would have read in their entire life.
Like we read several novels worth of Twitter every day.
Right.
You know, it's just about it being a different way to present the information, like being more punchy and disconnected, and being more hooky and like specifically kind of adversarial. And that was part of the influence for this.
Yeah. Adversarial is a very good way to put that because everything does kind of show up as a confrontation, even if it is with, you know, the nature of an object or an aspect of your personality that is stopping everything and forcing you to make a decision about how to deal with it.
Yeah. There is a lot of pathetic fallacy going on in this.
Yes. And I'm into it. Just assume I'm adding and I'm into it after most of the points we make.
Yeah. Just I will say the things I'm not into.
Right.
There's like 3 and we'll get to them. And 2 of them are so incredibly minor as to be, you know, just the nittest of picks.
Yeah. So the majority of the dialogue, that you do does not have a check associated with it. It's just a standard kind of dialogue tree. You know, you're exhausting your options as you see fit, or trying to get to a particular, conclusion before you, advance on. But, a good number of, you know, interactions that you have a degree of difficulty associated with them. And that is where the game decides to roll a dice.
Yeah. Like two real quick things before we move on from that first bit. Like one, you know, it's not always doing something difficult. Sometimes it is, just insight.
Yeah.
That you will get, like kind of pushing ahead, which is really interesting. 2, I want to heap a little bit of praise on the way that the dialogue trees work in this. Even if you divorced the checks from it, which would be catastrophic. Right. But even if you did, they're really good dialogue trees because as opposed to being like there's a lot of one-way streets.
Yeah.
In these dialogue trees, which is something that dialogue trees don't do. A lot of times, like even in games I really love, a dialogue tree is just a way of arraying information.
Yeah.
So like I have 4 questions I can ask about a subject. I can ask it in any order. I can go back to ask about it again. It's still fun and it's interactive to ask those questions in any order and get that info. In Disco Elysium, a lot of times you'll have a couple questions and you just get to ask one because the conversation naturally moves on.
Yeah.
And you don't get that information. So even, there's never this like just check off the boxes. Kind of like, I want to make sure I talk to this person about everything.
Right.
Which is something that's as old as the hills when it comes to dialogue trees. And it's not something that is inherently bad. But by having there be more consequence and forward momentum to it, it's not only does it feel more realistic, it also adds like consequence. It adds weight to the actual questions and kind of, for me, engagement. Like I really thought about it because I wasn't like, I'll just be able to go back and ask all these questions.
No, you can't just go through this like you're checking off a to-do list in addition to conversations that move on and preclude you from getting information, if you had chosen something different. There are prompts that you can follow that have consequences to them. Like they are an action that you take and they're just kind of put right in with the other ones where by asking a question, you reveal that like somebody else told you something. You probably like accuse them of something and those are not necessarily highlighted. A lot of the times that stuff is, comes along with a check and it tells you, but, enough of the time, it is just kind of there as a regular thing and you need to be very careful and think about, the implications of what you might be asking.
Yeah. Yeah. And that ties into a very specific thing we'll talk about later. Just put a asterisk in that if you're listening. When you do have checks either for a physical act or persuasion, something with a chance of failure, typical tabletop things, the game rolls 2 dice. It's a 2d6 system. 12s are always a success. Double ones are always a failure. And then it adds and subtracts modifiers, right. Which are obviously based on skills, but also based on equipment, thoughts, which are a kind of equipment we'll talk about. And then most, kind of broadly is circumstances. So when you have done things in one part of the world, if it would sensibly, increase your chances of doing something in another part of the world, it does here. And there's a really wide variety of these things, which lends itself to that kind of feeling like playing a tabletop game with a really excellent DM. Yeah. Where you could make you don't have to make the argument, but you could be like, hey, like I talked to this guy's sister and I can drop some facts about her. Like, don't you think that would make, him more likely to trust me? And a good DM will be like, yes. And a bad DM will be like, well, there's nothing in the rules that say that.
Right. It's a DC 15 or nothing roll.
Yeah. Like this is a good DM. Yeah. Like, and the game takes into account a shocking amount of those things.
And what's remarkable is it explains all of those when you mouse over a check, before, before you, or actually after you roll it or before you roll it, you see, roughly what your percentage chance of success is. And it lays out what all of your modifiers are from. So like if you have an option to, break off and change your equipment or invest a skill point or go talk to somebody else, you can see what is taken into account. So like you can address any deficiencies that might be present there a lot of the time.
Yeah. And real quick, just because I don't know where else to put this, what's interesting about this too is that, so when we talk about how it's taking into account all these modifiers and how the conversation always moves forward. One of the philosophical things about this game, and this ties into a lot of other systems, like I'm sure we'll talk about this in other places, but this is the ultimate tabletop fail forward game. It is part of the design philosophy of the creators, specifically like losers see things, winners never will. There is not a right answer for things. So this game is doing a lot of things to encourage you to role play and to think about your choices, have them actually matter. Yeah. But they are, because there is so little difference between winning and losing most checks in terms of overall quality, there is you can save scum a thing. They're all honest rolls except for one.
Right.
So if you decide, it's kind of like cheating in a choose your own adventure almost, but with like a lot of factors to discourage that.
Yeah.
If most of the endings weren't just death. Most of the endings are something funny or amusing or poignant happens, and the story moves on in a different, interesting way.
Yeah. And for this character specifically, it makes sense for him to fail in a lot of the ways that he does. He's a blank slate and you get to define him, but the things that you know about him are that he is an incredible fuck up.
Yeah, you're a fuck up too.
Yeah. You get better at passing things as you go along, and it kind of coincides okay, character, amnesiac cop, you get dignity and you get success as you increase your competence and figure things out. You're going to be a big doofus falling on your face and saying the wrong thing until you get your sea legs back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of pleasure to
that. So there are 3 kinds of checks that happen. Passive checks are happening basically all of the time. You don't have to opt to take them. It's basically imagine your DM says, okay, roll perception, or roll, do a sight roll or a search roll or something like that. And passes and failures on these inform kind of what information you glean, ambiently, passively from the different skills. We'll talk about the skills in just a moment, but there's no real detached third person narrator to this. Most of the information that you're getting is from these different aspects of your personality and your being speaking to you as if they were characters. It's like a Greek chorus kind of thing.
Yeah, nothing is objective.
Right.
And that is one of the, I would say, themes of the game.
Yes.
Everything passes through a filter, whether that filter is your own history and biases and thoughts, other people, or just, institutions.
Yes.
Everything is through a filter. There's no such thing as objectivity. There are red checks. These tend to happen at momentous times. You can only do these once, so you can't go back. But what's more interesting to me, and this again solves a tabletop kind of issue, does it in a very tabletop way, are white checks, which you can try again as many times as you like, as long as your skill has been leveled up or you've changed the modifier somehow.
Yeah.
So, in tabletop terms, I try to climb a wall, I fail, what's to stop me from trying it again? That is something that tabletop systems wrestle with. In this, it's you have to learn more. You don't know how to climb that wall.
Yeah.
You have to learn about the wall or learn about yourself, and then you can try again.
Yeah. So it's you invest the skill point to, improve your physical capabilities to get over it. You find something that you can move over to give you a little bit of a boost, or you get some equipment. You might not even need to pass that check. You might, in the course of your investigation, find out a way to get through the door to get into where it needs to be.
Yep. I don't think there are there aren't very many one solution problems in this. And again, the way that this ended up working that was very satisfying to me was, if something would be presented as suboptimal and I was I just don't want to do that. I would look around to try to find a different way to do it. Most of the time I'd find something. Sometimes I wouldn't though, and I'd have to take the kind of queasy compromise. And it felt bad.
Yeah.
But that bad feeling got rolled into my character as a way that felt very natural.
Yeah.
I can imagine a gamer psychographic who cannot handle this game because they do not like making suboptimal choices no matter what. This game is not for you, I think, in that case.
Yes.
Or you won't enjoy it quite as much. I don't want to say it's not for you.
It'll be stressful.
It'll be stressful. That is a thing that will be tough on you, I think.
Yeah. And, it's worth repeating again. We talked about critical success and critical failure. If something comes back and says, yeah, you only have a 3% roll, all right, what do I have to lose? If I can't feasibly get this up to a greater than 50% chance, I'll give it a shot and we'll see. Yep.
And just trying to be okay with those losses, at least temporarily is the number one pro tip, I think. Yeah. For this game. All of those things, all those checks, and most of the game is filtered through your skills. There are 24 of them broken up into 4 tributes. The tributes are intellect, psyche, physique, and motorics. And each one of these, something I'm very happy I didn't know going into this game, so you don't jump off. These are all personified and are unreliable. Every one of these things inside you is not necessarily on your side and has a want and a desire. And God, is that good? Like, how often do I I want some Nilla wafers. And my body's going like, eat some fucking Nilla wafers, dude. But then I know that's not good for me. It's like, my brain's just like, no, you can do it, like talking to me.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's okay. Like, you can do this. Like, all you had for dinner was broccoli. Go to town on this box of Nilla wafers. It's fine.
Yeah.
That is my body talking to me and not having my best interest in mind. Like, this game spoke to me on such a level as far as feeling divorced from myself.
Right.
In a lot of ways, like the non-trustworthy self, which is something I've always felt. Like, I've always felt like I am my own worst enemy. And this takes that chronological idea, which is key to Torment and key to this narrative, and also makes it current. Yeah. Like, that is a perpetual state. That is a natural state of being.
Yeah. It is a concept of your relationship with yourself, and specifically, things that are separate from your semantic experience, what might be going on in your surface thoughts, the inner narration that you might sometimes have. Right. Yeah. And what I love about this is that this is such a great way to turn the concept of intuition into both a literary device and a play device in this. Because so much of this represents information that you don't know and conflicts that you are not aware of that bubble up at these moments where it can either help you or hurt you, right? Yes. All of that is this unseen, unheard stuff that ultimately is taken into account and is dramatized here in a really effective way, specifically because of the conflict between them. So, you have things like your electrochemistry telling you, oh my God, do as many drugs as you can, versus your volition, which is like, we're not going to be able to investigate, so we should probably get back on task, bud. Yeah.
Well, and the thing that's really remarkable about this is that skill checks, earlier when we said they came up at decision points and conversations and physical things, they also come up for advice. Yes. And in a role-playing game, when gamers are really scared in general, I think, and myself included, of having no safety net. Yeah. There's a long history of skills that clue you into the inner workings of people. There's the perk in Fallout that is it highlights conversation options based on whether the person you're talking to will have a negative or positive reaction to them. We want that insight to things. This game, so much of this is, we want to know, we're playing a game, we want the optimal path, on some level. In this game, you are faced with decisions where you are really out of your league. You do not know what is going to be the optimal thing, or necessarily even having the context to choose which one is the one you want the most because you don't know the outcomes. Yeah. And then you're getting advice, but not advice from an omniscient, objective, kind of persona. Right. It's from 3 or 4 or 5 competing parts of you that you have to decide which ones you trust. And I again, putting a pin in something, all of this plays into how much this game just absolutely fucking shows me that narrative-based emotional story games need to have more mechanics. Having that situation is so interesting and crunchy. And did so much to make this story richer than any kind of just, we're just, Dear Esther, walk and hear the story. Right. No, give me this investment and these decisions to make because it's going to make the story hit me 10 times as hard. Yeah. I mean, and this is mechanical, right? So whenever there's an input, you do have, again, this chorus welling up within you offering their thoughts on this or, butting in with an intrusive thought. You can see whether that result is from a pass check or a failed check. And you take that into account.
if your empathy fails you, like it'll say like, I don't know, I'm kind of uncertain, but maybe you should push them. You should push them harder. And you can think like, okay, is this a situation where I should be listening to empathy or should I be listening to half-light? Right? Like, is this more of a fight or flight kind of thing? Like, should I listen to authority within me? And what are they telling me, based on the things that I know? And did they actually succeed? Is this them talking from a position of strength, or are they making a guess just like I might be?
Yes. And in both of those situations, the outcomes could be advantageous either way.
Yeah.
There are times where a check means you a suboptimal result, fails, and actually tells you the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right thing, like, again, that's not really the ballpark here, but right thing in terms of the outcome you might want.
Yeah.
For this.
Like, the outcome might actually be, like, which outcome does that aspect of you, tend to prefer? And this works into something. Being over-leveled in a particular skill can alienate you from other people and can put you into, worse situations. So like, say, this is an easy one because it matches with my philosophy. If you put a bunch of points into authority, that is going to win and probably drown out other voices and kind of guide you into making choices and being more of a hard ass when a more subtle touch that is not about scaring people might be preferable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Cole's a legendary hard ass. Like, he has all his points. So that's why that matches his philosophy.
No.
You just need to know that it's his way or the highway.
No, it matches my philosophy because, we just big swinging dicks walking around with too much of a sense of authority. That's not really good for the world. And I like the idea that, being overpowered in one aspect, and speaking about this in video games terms, of course, being over specialized in one aspect, can push you, can make things worse for you. Yeah.
It can be bad. Like I ended up having a lot of I went empathy cop, full on, and made a lot of decisions that were suboptimal because I was too worried about what other people thought.
Yes. I went Lynchian cop.
Quick aside.
Good.
Sorry, 1 second. The, current Hell World Portland protests.
Okay.
I found out last night that one of the most recurring chants that people are doing at the feds is small dick energy, which I was pretty into. Just fucking brutal.
Which okay, there's nothing wrong with having a small dick, but also you are saying that to get under the skin of,
authoritarian,
people who are ready to beat the shit out of you. Yeah.
Yeah. I love small dick energy. It's some guy comes up with no name tag and throwing tear gases, at old parent, at the elderly. It's the ultimate small dick energy. You're making up for something, dude.
Yeah. Oh God, fuck those guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you rolled as empathy cop. I rolled as space case, David Lynch cop. Who was operating entirely on intuition, entirely on the Inland Empire soul skill. Yeah.
These whole thing, so they're kind of different things that these go. They cover basically everything. There's 24 of them.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's like having a party of 24 people. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the interviews and stuff I've read specifically say that. They talk about how in BioWare RPGs, before you make a big decision, all your companions just say, this is good. And some of them say, this is bad. And they said, our goal was to overwhelm with that. What is it like to have 24 companions that all have different thoughts?
Yeah. What's funny is that almost wasn't the case. The initial plan when they were coming up with this was to have the skills be as granular as this, but to simply denote them with symbols. But that artist, kind of the icon, the icon artist they had left, and the character artist took it over, and ultimately ended up drawing portraits that, these very abstract, almost like Giger or Beksinski style portraits of these aspects. And, because they had portraits, well, now we need to give them personalities too. And it is it was a good thing that icon artist decided not to stay with the team.
Yeah, ended up helping.
Yeah.
So as a brief overview, we're not going to go through all 24 skills.
No.
But one of the things that's interesting is that they don't always work in the way you expect them to. So, there's, in terms of, your body kind of skills. So if you have high reaction speed, this might be a thing where you can, quickly, come up with a smart question when someone's trying to take you, put you off guard.
Yeah.
But you can also spot when someone else is taking a really long time to react.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that could be a lie, but then you also have drama, which is explicitly about lying and determining when other people are lying.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some overlap.
So, you know, when I walked into this, I knew, you know, I heard people say, yeah, this, you know, there's really no combat in this. And I looked at the skills and I thought, okay, so why is there endurance? Like, why are there all of these things that seem like they would be, you know, modifying attack rolls or whatever? This is why, because the skills, you know, even if they are related to a part of your body, they represent a kind of aptitude that you might have. So like, you know, your pain tolerance can help you understand when you're looking at somebody else, like if they're lying about being injured or something like that.
Yeah. And it's not, they're not all created equal.
Right.
You know, the bottom one, the Motorix, is probably the least useful.
Yeah.
Of these, it has the fewest number of checks. When you start a character and if you use one of the archetypes, there's not a Motorix.
Right.
Archetype, like there's a little bit of that unevenness to it. But you're also going to get tons of levels in the game and you're going to get tons of equipment that influences this stuff. So eventually you can have what you want.
Yes.
Generally.
Yeah. So you have those physical skills that help with checks. You also have, you know, like we referred to, you know, things like empathy or rhetoric, which provide you with clear commentary, specifically about the people that you are talking to or attempting to work with. You know, it doesn't just help you formulate a better argument for them, but like to understand, like maybe when a skilled liar is trying to misdirect you, right?
Yes. Yep. And then there are these kind of perceptive skills. So you mentioned Inland Empire. That is like intuition, like your spooky intuition. Yep. Perception, which is literally perception. Shivers, which is like your attachment to the city and cities in general.
I fucking love all of the text that Shivers brings up.
Yeah, Shivers is my favorite prose.
Yeah.
Of all of them, by like quite a bit actually. Like some of them, you know, are pretty workmanlike.
Yeah.
You know, they're not all very clearly defined voices, but when they are, like endurance is also really fun because endurance
it's
is
a gym
bully.
teacher.
Yeah, it's a gym teacher. It's a huge bully. But Shivers is really fun for that. And these are things that again are gut feelings. And these are not necessarily always true. You know, they can be true.
Yeah.
But truth is kind of, you know, to the side.
Right.
Of this. That's not really the concern.
Yeah. And all of these skills, you know, like we said, they're ingrained in the conversation system. And having high skills will like unlock certain options for you or like give direct advice. Like there are a couple of times where a skill says, hey, pick the first one. And if you have no good options, you can direct your response to them and say, come on, guys, you don't have anything better than this.
Yeah. And that doesn't always work, but it does kind of, again, in conversation with everything as a way to model thinking.
Yes.
You know, it leads a lot to that. There are two specific important stats in terms of your health. Like this is a crunchy mechanical game. Endurance and volition. So your body and your willpower basically, which govern your two health bars, which are physical and mental health. You can die of both of those things very easily, and this is a small numbers RPG.
Yeah.
You know, I had 4 and 2.
Okay.
Or no, I had 2 and 4 rather, respectively, of this. So in the very beginning of the game, I died from like turning on the lights. You know, that is the joke.
Yep.
Of this. It can be a thing where dying requires starting over, and I've had to like die and then go back and just have all the same conversations again.
That's a bummer.
So there's, you know, it's bummer 1 of like 4 in the whole game for me, but that is kind of a bummer, and it's there to do this joke.
Yes.
You know, to have you die of a heart attack because you turn on the lights, or die of a mental breakdown because somebody reminded you of your ex-wife and you did not have enough points in your volition.
Yeah. There are items that you can find and buy that will recover these. You know, it's pretty important to keep those topped off. Because if you're walking around with half health or, you know, half of your, volition or whatever, that will harm certain checks.
Yeah.
The game is very kind. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say they also steal the Earthbound thing of having rolling damage. You can have 1 hit point, and when you take damage, your hit points will go down, and you have like a couple seconds.
Yeah.
To pop on that health item.
Yeah. And it's like the button for that is just right in the inventory, or it is right in the interface down there at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is very kind. All of these skills can be modified by gear. Pretty much every piece of clothing that you can put on is modeled. I love the way that the different modifiers are, described. So it would be like, +1, +1 to dramatics because it's an especially colorful tie, but it'll say like -2 to authority. Like who would trust you if they saw you wearing that? Something like that.
Yeah. And it's just kind of fun. Like you end up, I feel like this is kind of lampshading the thing in RPGs where you wear the best clothes to have the best gear and nothing matches. Like in video games, like I think that like I look like a Katamari who rolled through a closet, like in this game. And I oftentimes did. Like there's no fashion souls in this because you can't really look cool. And also those stats are like getting a +1 or a +2 to a stat is huge in a small numbers RPG. The highest it can start at is like 5. So there's no fashion souls, but there is fashion police. If you wear ridiculous stuff, your partner will say like, hey, we need to have a talk. Yeah. And I ended up wearing something straight laced because they were the areas I wanted to shore up my stats. And, Kim took me aside to say like, hey, I actually like how you've been dressing like a police officer lately. Like keep it up.
Yeah. You're making it much easier for me to work with you. Thank you.
Yeah.
For not wearing like a rubber inner tube shaped like a ducky.
Yeah, exactly. That stuff is fun. There's a fun, and clothing is a meaningful reward.
Yeah.
It drives like the pickup economy, which drives the exploration economy. Because again, can I emphasize enough? This is a mechanical game. Like this is not just a narrative game.
Yeah.
Playing into that, drugs and alcohol will also modify your skills really significantly. The way they do is by altering the parent attribute.
Yeah.
So it's essentially a bonus in an entire field.
Yeah.
But this can cost other fields detriment. And in my role playing of this, I did not take any drugs.
Same.
So yeah, I just like one of the things I expect of fans of this game who are going to listen to this episode are going to be like, these fucking lame-o, boring / sorry cops played the game. Like, why didn't you go do a bunch of wild shit? And I was like, no, because it's an incredibly strong role-playing experience.
Yeah.
I cared about Harry and I wanted him to feel better and do better. Like the idea of making up for your shitty past and like trying to be a good person in the face of all this stuff is so resonant to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just like take the like, what if I fuck around?
Like option. This isn't really a joke to me, actually.
Yeah.
I walked into this expecting it to be, like a real madcap,
totally,
like Brazil kind of thing. But no, it actually resonated a lot. And even though my prominent kappa type was Cop of the Apocalypse, I believed that stuff that I was saying.
Yeah.
Same
kind of thing. Like I was expecting this to be a lot goofier and a lot more like leftist churlish.
Yes.
Then it ended up being like, we'll talk about that in generalities at some point too.
Yeah.
Like the kind of political backdrop stuff of this. But the fact that this, could be taken seriously and was really good if taken seriously, was the biggest surprise that I have this. So like, like, you don't need a drink, man. You feel like shit. You have this huge hangover and like these people had to deal with your horse shit, man. Like, pull it together, dude.
You've got a lot of work to do. Like a lot of amends coming up, buddy. Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with wanting to be the good guy gamer point. Like I talk about being evil in games and being delicious. And for delicious evil, like there's delicious evil like tyranny, and then there's repugnant, rotten evil like torment.
Right.
And the evil in this felt more like the latter. Like it was not going to be fun to be evil in this because I actually I cared about these people in this situation, this neighborhood. So since it wasn't going to be delicious, like why would I do these things that would harm? Like I understand I don't want to take that fun away from anybody. And as a role-playing challenge, like I've thought about replaying it and trying to like, I'm just going to do wackier shit and be Fear and Loathing. Like I want to be Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
What is this game like if I'm Hunter S. Thompson? But I'm exceptionally satisfied with my like, no, I try to be a good, like the Gary Butterfield playthrough of this. Like, I'm trying to be a good person. Like, I want to help,
Yeah.
That worked really well for me.
It speaks to the game's credit that it could have just been funny, but it didn't.
Yeah. And we're saying this like it's not funny.
Right.
Real quick, it is a funny
out
game.
Loud hilarious.
Yeah. But it's not just funny, which is all my favorite things. Like, something that's just funny, very rarely, like, works for me. Like, I need some heart. Yeah. So.
Yep. So every 100 skill or every 100 experience points that you get a skill point that you can invest. Your learning cap for different skills is determined, basically by the stats you pick at the beginning and whether or not you find a way through drugs or elsewise, to raise those caps. So this means you're getting, skill points quite a bit.
Well, it's worth noting that this is a linear skill progression in a way that role-playing games don't do. So not only is it always 100 XP to get a skill point, but major task accomplishments are always worth 70. Minor are always worth 30. Successful checks are always worth 5.
Yeah.
So you gain levels at the same clip at the beginning of the game as you do at the end of the game, which is really good because it makes you not, it kind of cuts down on analysis paralysis and allows you to put points into things like, we mentioned earlier with a white skill check, like I just want to try this again. Putting a point into it will do that, and it doesn't feel like a huge waste of a level.
It feels
because
important.
Another level's coming around the corner.
It feels important to mention that the game does not force you to spend a skill point when you get it. You can walk around, carrying, I don't know, as many of them as you want. I walked around with a bunch of them. Yeah, I had more than that. I had like 7 at one point.
There's a little like UI element that shows how many you have, and it limits to 3, but maybe you can go above it.
Yeah, it goes a lot. So. Like it shows those little pips down in the bottom right corner. But yeah, I kept those around basically for white checks. As I saw fit, and I also kept them around in case I found a thought for my thought cabinet.
Yeah. So this is considered like a lot of times kind of the marquee mechanic of this. I had heard about this before. I had seen this, and I do think this is really neat. It's also like a ring slot.
Yeah.
Like this is awesome, but I don't think it's quite as like wild as it's made out to be.
Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it, but it's not that crazy.
Yeah.
It's so this is, you get kind of like traits. It's an inventory for thoughts. A thought occurs to you. You've gained it. If you want to put it into the cabinet, it costs a point, and then it takes time to internalize it. While you're thinking about it, or once you've internalized it, it will change the world around you. If you are thinking about, feminism, you can say feminist things. And then once you've, got the thought locked in and it's internalized, it changes into kind of a new thought that, like, a lot of times, they start out with a detriment and then they turn to a benefit, but sometimes the opposite happens as well.
Yes.
Like you can end up getting a bad thought.
I do not know that I saw a single thought that didn't have a drawback associated with it. Either in its initial or final form.
A lot of them only have drawbacks in the original form, I think.
Yeah. But this is a way for you to, alter the options that are available to you, in certain ways. I felt like this should have had, based on what I heard, I expected this to have a much bigger effect than it ultimately did. I felt less like I was shaping my character doing this. I felt more like I was kind of like min-maxing for certain advantages. I felt most like I was shaping my character when I was spending my skill points and deciding which of my own kind of internal voices to emphasize, to empower.
Yeah, amplify and listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is a great little system, but I just don't think it's that robust, It's cool, like the pros in these is uniformly just really great.
Yeah.
And the idea that I act different and I perceive the world differently because something is on my mind. And then the idea that I have internalized this, like this is permanently on my mind. I feel like I figured this out.
Yeah.
Is a really cool way to model a real life behavior.
Yeah. Almost like real priorities. Yeah.
Yeah. That is really, really neat.
Yeah.
In terms of, like mechanically, initially this was a thing where I had so few slots and was having so few thoughts occurring to me that I just slotted in the ones I had.
Yeah.
When they popped up, and then eventually when I started getting a little choosier about them, started forgetting them. It cost a skill point to forget a thought as well.
Yeah.
I started kind of more shaping, my thoughts to my role-playing experience. But by that point, the game was almost over.
Right. So, yeah, I think you can max out at like 12 of these. It's a lot.
Yeah. I had all the slots unlocked for sure. And had something in all of them and had started forgetting. But again, this felt like there may be an expansion to this game, and that'll be, when I take my character and really start working on this.
Yes. So these thoughts can also help inform what your capo type is.
Yes.
So this is the thing that was advertised again as a feature for this. I have no idea really what it affects. Really? Like
it's
there are
just
4
dialogue.
of them. Yeah. So it's just dialogue.
It's like what's available.
Yeah. And so it reflects what's available and also keeps track of, when you did something that corresponded to one of these categories. Either super cop, which is, hyper competent lawman, boring cop, if you are by the book, sorry cop, which involves basically if you are overly apologetic and kind of limp, and then cop of the apocalypse, kind of like a Bible beating street preacher cop.
I don't think that there are just these 4.
No,
because there's honor cop. Which is when you turn down bribes and stuff. I know that there is a Superstar Cop, which is like the 70s cop show, very charismatic.
Yeah.
If you want to be like a big swinging dick.
If you want to be a hutch. Yeah.
Yes, like a hutch. I know there are at least those 2.
Yeah.
So I think there are more than just these 4.
These are the 4 that I had that I encountered in my playthrough, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think there might even be more than that because I didn't play so outlandishly.
Yes.
But these, what these affect generally is what people think of you and what options come up.
Yeah, it's kind of your reputation a little bit.
Yeah. You also have an alignment that is a thought, which is your political outlook, which is explicitly referred to as alignment. And these are
I've got this down below. Yeah.
You got those down below. Yeah. That's the other kind of alignment thing. So we'll talk about those a little bit later. But kind of those 2 things together make your character. I was, sorry cop, boring cop / communist / moralist.
Right.
You can, the dialogue around these is very funny. The first time I got suggested to become, one of these capo types, I expressed some reservation. They said, don't worry, you can dual class your capo type later. And that was just a very funny joke for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Okay. Yeah. That's an answer to the question the way I would have phrased it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very, very charming to me. Laugh out loud. Okay, I'll dual cop into a different capo type.
Yeah.
It's just big laugh.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. So we already talked about the other thing that modifies your roles, other actions that you have taken, and the fact that failing checks is not necessarily bad, and everything can fail you forward, which matches at least the way you start this story.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. You fuck up, and then when you want to succeed because a lot of times you're actually doing some good.
Yeah.
The setting is really, really important to this. It's really big. The amount of alt world stuff and alt history stuff in this, I find overwhelming. I do like that stuff. This is not, you're loving this, Cole, and you're hating this, Gary. Let's have a tour of the canning factory kind of thing. But it is a lot. If you, are at all sensitive to being noun blasted, you will be fucking noun blasted into orbit by this game.
Yep.
The noun blastery is just absolutely fucking incredible.
Yeah.
In this game, radioactive levels of noun blastery.
Yeah. You're going to be hearing about a lot of countries that vaguely correspond to countries that either exist in our world or at one point did exist.
Yes. Yeah. And just references to battles and cities. And you can, when you get these paragraphs, it's kind of up to you to be okay, when they say this nationality, they actually mean the Irish.
Right.
And you can kind of pick that up by context clues and sometimes through meeting those characters and seeing the accents and things like that.
Yeah.
This is, moving on to my second bullet point of things that I'm not enamored with in the game, is that sometimes the history lessons get these are the only parts of the game I ever skimmed. Because getting a huge list of just this country did this country did this, and this country did this. I like history, but having to then stop and do the puzzle of what they actually meant for all of those and then match them to the real world got exhausting to me. And I was much more interested in the people of this than I was in the powers.
Yeah.
At the intersection, yes, but I didn't care about the history of the world very much, outside of the revolution specifically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that specifically affects the land that you are walking on, like that is,
like
that is
Revachol,
so
I was
salient.
interested.
Yeah.
Revachol's history I was interested in. When they started talking about other areas of the world, I was like, I don't know. I'm glad you guys did this work.
There are definitely some of them that are more or less relevant to what's going on. I was generally on board with a lot of this, because I think very, very early on, I was attuned to the fact that they were commenting on, actual things that happened here on Earth Prime. Like, this is not Earth that this takes place on. But I kind of focused more in on, what do those nationalities and their struggles against each other, how is that reflected in the characters that you see around you? And you learn that, like, you pick that up, like, right away. One of the first people you meet in the game is from a country called Orania. And, very quickly you find out, like, oh, that's like Germany. Okay. That makes sense. And Orania's position in the world government makes sense if you think about them as, as modern day Germany. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It is, the nice thing about that stuff for me was that, it was pretty easy for me to sort things into important and less important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As I was reading. And that play was mostly for me with the historical stuff, but it also would play into other things as well.
A thing that would help, I think, and this would have been a lot of work and so much more text than is already here, but something like Tyranny's system where any proper noun.
You could hover.
Yeah, you could do a hover and see, and like the description could change depending on what you've heard before, or if you have a misconception, or if your skills would have a different opinion about the way that revolution went, etc. I
literally hovered over the things trying to make that happen on instinct, like several times, because something about being told 20 words I don't understand, like in a short succession, my brain doesn't hold on to them.
Yeah.
Like here's 20 made up words. Like in our world, we call water glip glop. Like that kind of thing eventually becomes white noise to me, like pretty easily.
It also helped that I was making notes of things too. Specifically notes for the document for the show. So I think maybe that made things a little bit more grabby for me.
That could definitely be. Like it definitely plays into this game's kind of pedigree and posture as a tabletop simulation, because this very much felt like the DM had made this huge, long history for the world and was insisting that I hear it.
Yes.
Which is a tabletop experience I've had many times.
Yeah. But yeah, it looks like it takes place, like when you first wake up, this could plausibly be in a funkier, version of like a 1970s bombed out Eastern Bloc country. But this is fictional. It is very heavily informed by our world, and its politics. Even though a lot of those are, streamlined or simplified. Like in this world, Karl Marx is also the person who led the revolution, as opposed to being an intellectual who somebody like Lenin, learned from and, used, as kind of the banner for his revolution. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some simplification going on. Flat Earthers, your time has come.
Yep.
This world takes place on Elysium, and it is flat.
Yeah.
It is a flat world.
It is called a corona that is separate, a fractured corona that is separated. We'll talk about the world ending threat later on, when we get there. That's not necessarily so important for right now, but yeah, we're on a flat Earth.
Yep. And the game, entirely takes place in Revachol, which is one of this world's kind of island continents, or on one of those.
Yes.
Insulindia.
Yeah. Revachol is like the big city, kind of at the crossroads of a bunch of other countries. And kind of the thing that is, worth noting here is that 50 years ago, this was where the largest communist revolution was put down by coalition of, other countries and forces. Basically, this world's version of the UN.
Yeah.
And it all happens in a single neighborhood. This is very focused, like on one neighborhood and then like a piece of coast on the other side of a canal. on the other side. This is Martinez. I think at one point Kim refers to it as like the drainage ditch at the end of a long pipe. Like everything ends up here, which is neat. A very good way to characterize it.
It's a place for lost souls. It's like the boat that Homer goes to when he doesn't want to give up his kidney.
And then they reject him because he didn't want to give up his kidney.
Yeah, after all their long stories of woe. If anyone wants to use the bathroom, go now. I'm not stopping. Yeah, there's no law here really. Very little legal oversight. And it is kind of managed by the union. You are in the middle of this struggle when you wake up between the dock workers union and this multinational shipping conglomerate, Wild Pines, which is also the name of or is associated with like the rich neighborhood across the river.
Yes.
So the class stuff is immediately, front and center. Like this is a depressed and poor neighborhood.
Right.
People live in squalor. The apartment building you get to explore is quite run down and gross. Yeah,
they live in squalor while constantly hearing about how wonderful a metropolitan Revachol more broadly is.
Yes.
You never get to see it, but it is described, Shivers gives it to you, like looking across the bay at these shining towers, where this world's version of capitalism decided to shine its light. And here you are in the shadow where mold is growing, essentially. Yeah. And this sets you up with all kinds of, competing philosophies. Something that I didn't expect was for the depiction of these to be pretty nuanced, actually.
Well, like nuanced and negative.
Yes.
And this game, what I was expecting from this game was to have, it have more of a perspective on one of these being right.
Yes.
Because it is Chapo adjacent and this is a game made by leftists.
Right.
And I consider myself a leftist. I love leftist. I think that, oftentimes we are, confident.
Right.
And sometimes I think that's very good. But it's not something that I expected, or it is something I expected in this piece of media. Like this was just going to be like, yeah, communism is good, partly because that's what, like the people who are fans of this game are.
Right.
Like there's a lot of like meme kind of, and I'm not saying that I don't think communism is good. I'm saying that there are a lot of like kind of meme, churlish, puckish kind of takes about it.
The dirtbag left, specifically like here in America, like this is really associated with like democratic socialism, right?
Yes.
But like the version of communism that you can explore if you decide to internalize that thought is incredibly antiquated and verges on sociopathic and tanky. Like it is full on revolutionary militant communism that is adjacent to some of the pinker stuff that you see, like specifically in the unions, which explicitly, kind of play around in more of like a social democracy kind of deal, looking for kind of a more democratized, economics, which is what I favor. I felt very uncomfortable picking up like full communism and talking about like gulags and stuff.
Yeah. Even the union, even the trickle down stuff is actually portrayed as pretty flawed.
Yeah.
When I, had the communism idea occur to me, it takes place as a conversation between you and one of your skills. And it was great. It was like, it told me, the idea of communism, which is something that I actually think is beautiful and still worth pursuing, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And then it was like, but we're just gonna have to break some eggs. Like, we're gonna have to kill this many people. And like, my options were like, hold up a minute, ... And it's like, no, don't worry about it. Like millions of people just in the guillotine, will be okay. And
I don't know about that, man.
Yeah, like it is a weird thing where like, and call out my leftist credentials all you want for this, right? But like when I say like, get out the guillotine, it's not like I would actually take a whole lot of joy in watching anyone's head get cut off. I just want to take their fucking money. Yeah. I just want them to have the same amount of money as everyone else. I recognize that historically, like a lot of times that has led to, suffering.
Yes.
Right? Like that is undeniable. It's not always. I don't think that it's like a thing where like communistic ideas are always totalitarian horror shows.
Yeah, and additionally,
but they can be, and this game emphasizes that in a way that's like, oh, this thing that you maybe want is actually, it sucks.
Yeah,
and it says that about all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like none of the stuff is good.
Yeah, and everything is shown as being, a very, like when you adopt this thought, specifically when you're talking to yourself, it is the most extreme and pure version of it. And most of what you're walking around in the city of Revachol, in this neighborhood, is like a battleground where in some form or fashion, all of these have clashed and created systems that just hurt the people. Like no matter if they were trying to help them, doesn't matter. It still hurts them because you're walking around in the scars of these battles and kind of the ethical blind spots that each of them had.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So the human cost is always centered, which is one of the things that, again, when I talk about how this game surprised me, that emotional core. Mm-hmm. And what I ultimately think this kind of stuff, is less important to the game than initially it seems, is window dressing. Yeah. And the game being about what do we do and how do we make ourselves in the face of these things. Mm-hmm. And that is something that's very resonant to me now when I do feel buffeted by the winds of, philosophies and political systems that I have no say in and have, an incomplete understanding of. And that's also true of most people.
Yes. I am very happy that it is not as strident as it possibly could have been, or as I was led to believe that it might be.
Same. Yeah. Even though if it condemns any of them, it's fascism.
Of course.
Which is the second one, which, there isn't a faction that is fascist. Even though I think you could argue that the major antagonist during the one fight scene.
Yes.
Even though they're not representing fascism in that exact moment, do represent fascism in terms of their history and such. These are like royalist, but largely racist. Mm-hmm. And one of the things this game does, and I did not have the stomach for it, but when I talk about delicious evil versus repulsive evil, think just for a moment about how unusual it is that there is a game that allows you to talk philosophy with a race realist and become a racist if you want. Yeah. You can internalize that thought and say maybe this is correct. Maybe eugenics is true. Phrenology is great.
You learned that from a character who is literally called Measurehead.
Yes, exactly. It is making fun of that kind of thing, but it does allow you to play with those ideas. It does give them equal footing in terms of allowing you to explore them. They're just all kind of shit on. Mm-hmm. The super damning thing that's part of this that I love is, in the thought cabinet for it, it says, it talks about how bad this is, and it says the big appeal for this is that this is the only political philosophy that explains why girls won't like you. Most of the other ones don't, but this one actually tells you that it's because they're dating foreigners and because of this. And I fucking small dick energy, man. I was way into it.
Oh my God, that is so appropriate.
Yeah. Unlike most philosophies, this one actually, I was so into it. Big laugh.
God, that is really well observed.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry. Wow. Okay. That caught me off guard. I intended to read all those thought cabinet things, but, I didn't get around to it in my prep.
Yeah. Yeah. Super good.
Ultraliberalism is a third one of these, that comes here. This is just unrestrained libertarian market capitalism. Basically whatever results in the most profit, is the most good. Humans be damned.
You grind and you hustle.
Yes. This is largely represented by Wild Pines, but something that's really interesting is that the chief representative, a woman named Joyce, who was sent here from Wild Pines to, negotiate with the union, they're really only a half-hearted representative of that. They ultimately end up in that as a function of their role, and they're very self-conscious when they say, when you talk to them about about their philosophy, they say, oh, I'm the worst kind of monster. I'm an ultra-liberal.
Yeah. And a very surprisingly likable character.
Yes.
Coming away from that conversation and being I like this person, would again, lend itself to that nuance.
Yeah.
Moralism, or the kingdom of conscience, is the centrism in this world. What people on the left might call liberalism or, so this is, adherence to kind of incremental progress, having this kind of soft imperialism through international finance, So this is the official land of the law, your law of the land.
Yeah.
This is what Revachol adheres to specifically, and your partner Kim is also a half-hearted adherent to that.
Yeah. Kim is he started out as one of these more wholeheartedly, but ultimately he has, not retreated, but ended up in the position that this is not his fight, and he more so wants to be a good cop who, helps people that way. He has really kind of shrunk the sphere of what he, seeks to have influence over. Which
a
is
ridiculously
very
relatable notion.
Yeah.
Absolutely relatable.
Yeah.
Again, in just damning prose, the Kingdom of Conscious thought was one of the only thoughts I actually forgot because I was so repulsed by it when I got it, which has the line, a moralist does not really have principles. If they find one, it's like a kid stumbling across a toy on the floor, and like that toy, it must be immediately put away and the child reprimanded, which is the most damning thing I can think of to say about centrist, and is also pretty much true.
Yeah.
It's mean, but yeah, it's not really about principle.
Yeah.
And also you shouldn't have principles. Like being too passionate is a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's moralism.
Don't be rude.
Yeah. Don't be rude. Always, fight for the good of people, but something is not the right answer just because it is a midpoint. Something is not the right answer merely because it only, changes things a little bit. Right?
Yeah.
You can have a principle.
Yeah. It literally says, the kingdom of conscious will be amazing. We'll just never get there.
Yep.
And that's that's incremental change there for you.
Xeno's arrow. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to see it. So.
Yeah. it was hilarious. This thought first occurred to me when I found just a pair of very unremarkable pants. It was just like a pair of khaki, chinos, like Dockers. And I put it on and it's like, ooh, you're feeling pretty moderate, aren't you?
It's very funny. Yeah. Like, wait, what? No, I'm cool. No, it's okay. You're not cool. You don't have to be.
Yeah.
The conversation's very funny. Dockers are the ultimate centrist pants. That's why Tim and Eric wear them as a joke.
Yep.
Oh
man. Each of these pleats, gives you just a large amount of slack for your moral compass. Yeah.
Large amount of slacks.
Yeah. But, like we said before, this does show, broadly, how humans, individual people suffer at the hands of these. And the final dialogue battle, kind of talks about and comments on the way that a lot of these, end up, having a cost like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
In a general sense, so the kind of standout feature of this game is the writing. This is what it has got all the accolades for.
Mm-hmm.
It is incredibly good. It reads novelistically. It doesn't have embarrassing video game writing. It doesn't have sloppy exposition. It doesn't have, sometimes a character will tell you a history lesson, but you ask for it.
Yes.
It doesn't just have, it's well paced, very poetic. It is, kind of, hyper realized or a little elevated.
Yes.
In a way that I think, most matches to me, Vertigo Comics.
Okay.
I know that he is canceled, but I was like, oh, this is a Warren Ellis video game.
Mm-hmm.
Warren Ellis has actually made video games and they don't sound like this, but that's because he's really reined in. This was like, oh, this is like Transmet style. This is very similar to Transmetropolitan if you enjoy that comic, or like Grant Morrison writing or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like True Detective by Vonnegut by, Vertigo Comics is the writing style of this.
Mm-hmm. And if all of those sound like things that you are 100% in for, you're going to find a lot to enjoy here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good. It's incisive. It's very punchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's poignant when it needs to be. The characters have very distinct voices.
Mm-hmm.
I know a Kim Kitsurugi line.
Yep.
Before I read it, I know what he's going to say. That character ended up becoming very well realized and sketched to where it's like, oh, Kim's not going to like this. And it wasn't, BioWare. It wasn't like, oh, this character doesn't like it when I take closed palm, closed fist. So I just know they're not going to like it because they're a 1D garbage character.
Right.
No, it's no, this is a really nuanced, interesting character that will make exceptions for things. Not only could I say oh, Kim won't like this, I could predict Kim will pretend not to like this, but actually will.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's fucking wild. That is good characterization and writing.
Yeah.
You know, Kim won't like this, but once he tries it, he will.
Yes.
You know, like that's just an absolute feat in terms of like modeling human behavior and personalities in video games.
Or deciding, I will take the lead in this because I know Kim has problems specifically with youth. I know that Kim has problems specifically with, like juvenile delinquency, right?
Yeah.
Or I will let Kim take the lead here because we can do a good cop, bad cop kind of thing, but it's never called that. Like it's never brought out as like, this is the system. It is just left to grow organically until you have an incredibly good picture of who this guy is. And he doesn't just exist as, you know, as a foil to you. It's not like he is waiting for you to do one thing so he can be the opposite and there can be tension.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He's not Oscar as he was planned in Dark Souls 1. Like he's his own thing. Like, we were besties by the end of this. Mm-hmm. And I was personally invested in not letting down my good buddy.
Yeah.
You know, I liked it when this character liked me because I was able to imbue my Harry with so much Garyness that it mattered to me in a way that is incredibly rare for like a narrative game.
Yeah.
And like, all those choices are what did it. Like, I got to be Gary in this as opposed to another narrative game where I have to be whatever the story you're telling. Like, I have to be the negligent father from Heavy Rain. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah. I respected Kim. Like, just, I looked at the way that he handled himself around people, and when I earned his respect, that was a very good moment.
It feels incredible.
Yeah. And like, it pays off.
How did that feel better than beating a Dark Souls boss? Like, earning, like, Kim, like, giving me a nod and, like, you know, barely perceptible smile because I did something. It was one of my, like, best gaming feelings.
Yeah.
Like, and it's because it was me. It was like, I was in it, you know, and it's just like, that's fucking super cool.
Yeah. And it's like, it's super like mechanically important too, because like, you know, to spoil something, there's a moment later in the, you know, in the story where like him trusting you determines whether or not you can save his life by warning him about danger.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's just absolutely incredible. So he's obviously the biggest, you know, kind of character in this. Other characters are also very good. Mm-hmm. You know, the pop-up, he's just the one that you have the most dialogue with. Like it is Harry and Kim's story primarily.
Right.
With this. The visuals are also really nice. Mm-hmm. It is, you know, your character's moving around on a pre-painted kind of backdrop. Mm-hmm. Portraits are done in this kind of oil painting way. Everything is kind of a little bit abstract. Specifically the Beksinski-esque surreal drawings for the thoughts. Mm-hmm. Once you internalize them, are really striking and cool. They all look like King Crimson album covers.
It's so good.
Yeah, I'm way into them.
Yeah, no, just like a lot of them, specifically the thoughts in the thought cabinet, are meldings of like flesh and machine, in like a Giger style way. It's very good. Yeah. The music is fantastic. I just I have been humming the song that plays when you're in the cafeteria, basically in the, you know, since I started playing this 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's by a band called British Sea Power. This is, you wouldn't think so, but this is largely a licensed soundtrack.
Yeah.
A lot of these songs are instrumental versions of songs that they just have, that they wrote. They aren't original compositions for the game.
Yeah.
So if you like the music in this game, it seems likely that you will like the band, British Sea Power.
Yeah.
Which I'd heard of, but never listened to.
I had never heard of them, and I'm probably going to give them a shot later on. So,
I don't know whether I want vocals on this.
Same.
I think I'm just real into the the instrumental. So I've been listening to the soundtrack of this quite a bit. That and then the song when you first start going south, when you leave the hostel.
Oh yeah,
with the horn line that comes in, that's extremely good as well.
Yep.
Yeah, really, really good shit.
Yeah. The one thing is aesthetically that, you know, did not land for me entirely all of the time, was the voice acting. You know, there are some characters who, when they speak, it really works. Like it is a good performance done well. Kim sticks out. Kuno, the delinquent that you speak with behind the hostel, where we'll talk about him. Everett Clare is done so extremely over the top that it actually ends up working very well. It's pretty inconsistent elsewhere, I think.
nothing stood out to me as bad.
Ah.
So I think that when those pop up, point them out just because I don't think I will note them. Yeah. Those are like standouts for me as ones I thought were very good.
Yeah.
But I didn't have quite as many, things I was like, this is not great.
Yeah.
So a lot of these, there are some guest voice actors from Leftist Podcast. The main antagonist during the big action scene is one of the dudes from Chapo Trap House. Also the podcast Red Scare, gets some play. I do not listen to those podcasts. I don't know these people really.
Neither do I. I know the Chapo people more than Red Scare, but mostly where they've intersected with other stuff that I listen to.
Yeah. See, Cole, we're not left enough. There's not really a way to win. Like we can be like, we don't listen to that podcast, but that's not good enough. And then, I don't, wherever we are, it's wrong.
I can't help it that I am more of a Majority Report person than Chapo. Rest in peace, Michael Brooks.
The absolute monster. How dare. How dare.
I mean, but they've had every single one of them. They have Virgil Texas on so much, Gary.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because it's not straight from the source. You have to have this kind of churlish disregard for human life.
Cool.
Is the only thing that is acceptable.
Yeah. And we're actually gonna make people mad. I've got no problem really with Chapo.
I don't either. I don't not listen to it out of like a principle. I just don't listen to it because I'm not in the mood pocket for that kind of podcast.
It stresses me out. Yeah.
What I am responding to is people getting cranky at us because we are too left, and then other people getting cranky at us for not being left enough. And it just being like, I swear to God, I am not the parody that you think I am, people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, it's, we get that too. No, they come at us.
So,
from all angles.
I like to see Chapo people on Twitter. They make good, funny jokes.
They're very, very funny. Yeah. But, some of their performances are a bit inconsistent, let's say.
Yeah.
But, regardless, I think it's important if like them being in this probably was a huge part of, what, got a lot of people maybe interested in this. Like their presence, kind of vouched for what this was ultimately going to be, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this game, it comes from a place. It is actually set in a world that was established, kind of first published in this 2013 novel, called Sacred and Terrible Air, that was written by, Robert Kurvitz, who is a writer from Estonia. He, everything calls him a Karelian Estonian novelist, Karelia being like an ethnic group. He lives up in Estonia. I am ignorant of Estonia, so I have nothing else to say.
The book itself, it takes this is a prequel to the book. So it's the same world, but if you want to see how this world develops, that book is going to be for you, as we'll talk about later. It did get reprinted because initially it was a huge flop. Yeah. Only sold 1,000 copies, and this really depressed Kurvitz. He fell into a deep depression and into alcoholism.
Right.
Which makes sense for this game. Starts making this game make kind of sense.
Yeah.
He kind of got out of this along with another novelist, Kaur Kunder. And the two of them started writing about their experience with this bender and this drunkenness and this depression. But they ended up wanting to have something a little bit more of a broad appeal. Interviews with the guy, he talks about, we wanted to make a commercial product. Like we wanted to make something for people to exist, or to like, even though if it exists through our lens. Yeah. Like we didn't want to make something that was in an ivory tower. We wanted to make something that people loved.
Yeah.
And they chose a game, for that.
It was a very good choice. Like, and, even like the base principles of this came up in a very relatable kind of circumstance. Like, Kurvitz is kind of between us in age. He was born in 1984. And like they came up with the base idea for the setting just while getting blasted drunk in 2005, just like with his game group and his, music group, while just like listening to classical music and saying, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was a blank? And that ultimately turned into this. It's incredibly relatable. Cool. Yeah. So they decided, we're going to take this. We're going to try and turn it into a game instead of a novel. They set up the studio in 2016 and had really limited resources initially, setting up and working from a squat, with just their own money and limited investment from friends and family. before they ultimately got venture capital and kind of moved to England, and primarily worked out of Brighton, but also, it was an international production. They had contractors all over the place.
Yeah. I think that practically that element of this being a commercial product and it being, this being part of their narrative actually serves the final piece so much.
Yeah.
I had a moment of this, when I was exploring the, Doomed commercial, building, where I was like, I am so glad this wasn't Kickstarted and I'm not reading Kickstarter, seeing backers and reading people's Kickstarter shit right now.
Yeah.
Like, I know that it's kind of popular to turn against that. And like, I am in favor of Kickstarter as a thing. I've used it. I like it. But man, would that have pulled me out of this?
Yes.
So an early concept for this, had a much more, pronounced buddy cop kind of aesthetic, as we called Torson and McLean. They did not go with this, but those characters exist in the world. They are squad mates of your main character.
Yeah.
Torson the Torso and McLean.
But yeah, they're just like the badass cops, who occasionally, if you pass esprit de corps checks, you will like get an inkling of what they are doing, elsewhere. Yeah. And it's always, either badass or way over the line in a way that those kind of stories tend to be. Yeah. Early on, this had a combat system. They thought, hey, we're modeling this after a game with combat system. I think very wisely they dropped it, in favor of, having the conversation system, be as mechanically intricate that it is.
And sub in for combat when needed.
Yeah.
Again, like the designer said that he wants to, for the next project they do, more combat is like the top of his list.
Yeah.
Like doing things that are more dangerous situations, but doing them in this engine. What kind of interesting situations can you do if you are emulating someone's high adrenaline thoughts during a situation of conflict, but with this kind of tact as opposed to just, die rolls to see if you hit or not, which does happen in this game. Like it says it doesn't have a combat system. There are points where you take a shot and then you have a die roll to see if you make it.
Yeah.
Similar to Deus Ex, or something like that, like Fallout. It's just de-emphasized. I think that they want to have more danger. Which to me is good because I love that scene very much.
Very much.
They're originally going to have a third party member. There are two now. One that only kind of shows up at the end. Generally, you're with Kim. This third party member was going to be Lena, who is the cryptozoologist's wife, which sounded like a euphemism when I first read it. And I was like, what is that a euphemism for? And then there's a large cryptozoology subplot in this. She is in a wheelchair and they end up dropping this because of level design considerations.
Yeah.
And she even says it. I asked her to come with me. And she said, Revachol is not very wheelchair accessible.
Yeah.
So.
But she's a good character. I like her.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. Good for them not just like, erasing her disability. Like they could have just made her walk and done the character, but they're like, no, we can't totally redo the game to make this, wheelchair accessible. It doesn't feel right to the sense of place that it would be. Like this is a struggle this person would actually deal with.
Yeah.
And it shows up in her character arc. Like she can't go out looking for her husband. Like she can't, and it's only a couple blocks away. It's not that
But it's
far.
like along a beach. Like they're down on the reeds and stuff. It just,
Exactly. Like she can't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually like this portrayal of someone who is disabled.
Yes. So Zaum, they did something kind of unusual. They opened the game up for translations by fans. And if a translation is used, they end up crediting those fans for it. So like the credits for this, show like Chinese localization by so-and-so, they are considered to be contributors to the work, which is very cool. And that's one of the reasons why this got really popular in China. Just they have a particularly good localization there.
Yep. Making this kind of a summer theme because we're also going to do Plants vs. Zombies, which I recently found out has like 7 spin-offs that are China only.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, tons of different versions of that are only available in China.
Nice.
So this is incredibly literate, again, in the Torment mold. And it pulls from several like named and literary and philosophical inspirations.
Yeah.
There are also pop culture inspirations as well.
Yeah. Like
characters will quote, NWA at you and such. The name of the bar is a name of a British Sea Power song. Whirling in Rags.
Yeah. At one point when you're talking with Shivers, you can quote a verse from DMX's Where to Hood At, When your limbic system is talking to you, it sings a line from Only Love Can Break Your Heart by Neil Young, which I did not in a million years expect to have happen in a game.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yep. Super, super good.
Yeah.
The original title of the game was going to be No Truce with the Furies, named after an R.S. Thompson poem. That's used as the game's epigraph, but they changed it because everyone read it as furries instead of furies.
Yeah.
And it's just like they didn't want to make, No Truce with the Furries is a totally different kind of thing.
Yeah. It just, it puts it on a different footing, even if that is not what they intended. But they chose the name Disco Elysium, which not only refers to the game's kind of aesthetic, and specifically your character and people who are of his age cohort who are all kind of out of date and have, basically this fashion by default that is, out of fashion by the time you arrive here. What I didn't realize until I did a little bit more reading, disco is a double entendre. It means I learn in Latin. And you are learning about Elysium here. So neat.
You learn the world.
Good job.
The title I came around on really hard when I found out that it did have meaning, because initially it sounds like kind of low random, like these are catchy sounds, like somebody would name an album.
Yeah.
But I was happy that it was more grounded than that. This is an incredibly critically acclaimed game. Tons of accolades, sold really, really well. There's hint of like a DLC in the game, and it's when your character comments like, if we end up with a bunch of money, it seems like they did. So we will probably be able to do next year or the year after that cover do an episode on the Legend of the Cocaine Skull expansion, which I'd really like to do.
Same.
Which is what fans think will probably be.
Yeah.
So they want to make that expansion pack. They're also going to make a full sequel, day and date. I can't remember the last time I found a new property that I am like this on board with.
Yeah.
And there's also, again, that tabletop system, which we mentioned, it's tentatively called You Are Vapor. I am less excited to actually play that, but I will definitely pick up the book to read it.
Yeah, it'll be wonderful to read.
These people.
Absolutely. I am so happy that this is successful. Cause
it doesn't feel right. Doesn't it feel like we don't deserve it?
Good things can't happen,
it feels
Gary.
right, but nothing feels right. Yeah. Right. Like it feels right, but things don't feel right anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, this is actually awesome, but it doesn't feel like the kind of thing we should get.
Right. I feel like we lost the privileges for this kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, what do we do to deserve this?
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. It feels good.
Day and date for me is the translation of Sacred and Terrible Air. I want that book to sell really well, because that will be a wonderful, kind of, conclusion to that book's story of, being a flop and then being, redeemed for this, author who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, given the work that I see on the screen here. So I want to pick that up.
I'll be real curious.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna pick it up.
Something that I'm very trepidatious about is the television adaptation. I had no idea this was going to be the thing until I went and shored up the notes today. It was announced in Variety. There's really no detail aside from the fact that it is being produced by a production company called DJ2. And the main producer who is giving interviews about this was also a producer on the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Yeah. Good cop, blue cop. That was also a buddy cop movie.
Yeah. Okay.
And was also dealt with issues of technocracy and small town living versus
big cities.
So there are a lot of shared themes between the Sonic the Hedgehog movie and Disco Elysium. I don't want a TV show of this by any means.
No.
There's literally no performance I think would be good for it. There are things that I like, obviously in the medium of TV and movie, but I think that this, I don't even, I want to read the book and I want it to be successful.
Yeah.
I think that this is the secret sauce. I think that this presentation with this music, these graphics, and really importantly, this gameplay is what makes Disco Elysium.
Agreed.
So all of these little adaptations are things I just want to support because I don't want the spigot to shut off.
Same.
I really just want more game because mechanics are incredibly fucking important.
And they're very important here.
If you're making an indie, super important. If you're making an indie game, you're making something soft and narrative, make your game fun to play and full of mechanics. You will get more investment, I promise you.
Yeah. Don't be scared.
Don't be scared. Like I like, even though they're not my favorite things, like it's like I like Phoenix Wright more than I like just a light novel with nothing in it. You know, give me that crunch.
Please, all the crunch you can give me.
Oops, all crunch games.
But
Gary, not the labor kind.
No.
Just need to make sure that's out. Oops, all crunch games wouldn't have come through well as a soundbite if that was my response to Rockstar, like, whoops, all crunch games. Baby, overworked.
Ooh, you can really taste the tears on this one. Yummy yum.
Yeah.
So let's get started. When you open the game, you pick your character class. You get 3 at the start. I went with the sensitive cop, because I liked the description. Very psychological, a magnetic personality, but unstable. You might lose your mind. Yeah.
And there is a create your own character mode, which is what I ended up doing. When you do this, you are picking your stats, and then you're also picking a principal stat, which starts with a higher cap and at a higher number.
Yes.
So typically, you have these 4 attributes you can split between. You have points to make them all 3, which is average. Yeah. I ended up going 4, 4, 2, 2. So 4 for my intellects, 2 for my physicals. And that served me pretty well.
Yeah. Now I was at like 5 psyche, 1 intellect, which was very interesting to roll around. Like I ended up failing things that I felt like I ought to have, but the empathy was off the charts. And ultimately I got around to conclusions through those compensatory skills.
Yeah. I think that might explain part of actually why we had different experiences with the history stuff. Because if you have a high intellect, you have a high encyclopedia. And what encyclopedia does is just chime in defining things. So all of my conversations that were these historical things would also have my brain telling me trivia or defining these things as they happen. So, each history lesson was, roughly twice as long because my brain wouldn't shut up.
No,
remembering things.
My encyclopedia skill was awful. It was Encyclopedia Shitanica.
Yeah. Yep. So it is, that will make a big difference. Just defining things and knowing history is a skill in this.
Yeah. I got really annoyed when I ran up against the one character who has a really high, encyclopedia skill. I couldn't imagine that happening all the time. Yeah.
It's very funny that you run into another character who's having the same struggle that you are, who has a skill that is too high and it makes them less bearable to be around.
Yeah. So you pick that, and the majority of the opening of the game is against a black screen. You have the epigraph, the Furies are at home in the mirror. It is their address. Even the clearest water, if deep enough, can drown. Kind of setting up right away that this is, a story about reflection and a story about the things inside you that are killing you.
Yep. Yeah. And it opens up very specifically with your ancient reptilian brain, which is one of these characters that you have, and your limbic system, both struggling over you, both arguing. And this is, weirdly, this is very similar to being born in Alter Ego.
Yeah.
With different parts of, your brain telling you what it's like if you wake up. The reptilian brain says, offers you more oblivion, like it wants to die and be out of it. Your limbic system says, listen, these are truths that are going to bring you back to humanity.
Yeah.
There are apes who are up on the surface of that punching each other. If you get that line, if you make that check or whatever, you can bring that up later.
Oh yeah.
Which is very fun. You get to ask, the Pines representative. Like, is this about the apes? And Kim gives you a side eye, and it's very fun.
Yeah, at this point though, I was very much choosing Oblivion because it was offering comfort. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But regardless, the meat thing fires up. Your body kicks into action because it wants to walk the desert, hurting, longing, dancing to disco music.
Yeah. And you waken in this game, again, clear torment things, waking up on a slab. You wake up dead on the ground in your underwear. Absolutely, totally shitty hotel room that is absolutely trashed. Beer bottles everywhere. Only in your soiled underwear. Right. Like I thought a couple times about this, how my guy must smell because I didn't get a chance to wash up until like end of day 2. So I was just like, oh man.
Well, yeah, because you broke your sink and your shower. Your bathtub is full of beer bottles.
Well, and yeah, exactly. So really no good. And I drank no water during any of this too, which is just me being an old man thinking about this and being like, of course you have a hangover, buddy.
Yeah, come on. You don't earn the nickname Tequila Sunset,
Yeah, exactly.
By drinking water, man. Yeah. But you wake up, only in your underwear. It looks like an explosion went off. Like all of your clothing is everywhere. You only find one of your shoes initially. You find the other one if you go out on the balcony. You threw it through the broken window. Your kind of ominously, your necktie is hanging from the ceiling fan, kind of implying that you probably tried to do yourself in.
Yeah. The hideous necktie here, which we'll talk to you, is a character.
Yeah.
And has a pretty fun payoff. Did you get the payoff? For
the spirit bomb. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that quite a bit. I also, the first time I played this, I died turning on the light.
Oh, fun.
Turning on the light in the room, will kill you. It does damage. I had nothing to heal, so I had to start over. You can die in a lot of ways, that are like that, just kind of for that joke. And then also to show how unhealthy you are.
Yeah.
So I went into the bathroom, looked at the mirror. Your instinct tries to stop you from clearing the fog to look at yourself.
Yeah.
But if you don't, ever look at yourself, your portrait for the whole game will be fuzzy. In the UI, which is a really nice touch. But I did clear it. And you get this kind of, piece of shit. Like you get big mutton chops, and something they call the expression.
It's this horrible grin.
This shit-eating grin, that you learn from a disco star. You picked that up from a disco guy. That was the first thought I got.
Yeah.
And my thought cabinet was, learning about that guy.
Yeah. And you can even, by looking at this, you can pass a check and say like, oh, I don't recognize this face. This is the face of late stage alcoholism. You're bloated and the skin is, reddened. There are burst blood vessels. There's like lividity. There's, blue bruising around. You are
huge gin blossom.
Yeah. Your nose is a big red bulb. You are wearing every single hardship you've ever had on your face. Mostly the self-inflicted ones, are at the surface.
Yeah. Little pro tip for you. The game allows you to shave at some point.
Don't.
You look like shit. I don't think it has a negative actual effect on the story, but my character looks like absolute garbage with that beard covering his compromised face. Which again, highly relatable.
Yep.
Like, don't shave is a good pro tip in general.
Yeah.
But certainly for this video game. Like, you don't want people to see more of your puffy, compromised face. In quarantine times?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
I don't even drink. I don't want people to see my face. Yeah. No. So.
No. You can also pass in checks to clear the expression to stop doing it, because at this point it's, involuntary. If you stop doing the expression, you just have this face of extreme sorrow.
Yeah. I never got to stop making the expression until I shaved.
Yeah. I think the expression without the mutton chops would be really upsetting, actually.
I don't know that it exists in the game.
Right.
It's like, it's going to be cut from the files. It's like Luigi and Super Mario Bros. 64.
But it's there. It's there, Gary.
Yeah, exactly. We'll find it in 20 years, man. Yep. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you leave your hotel room here, which you have to do to go out to the deck to get your shoe.
Yes.
It's very clever as you're gathering your clothes here. It's teaching you that the clothes have bonuses and detriments as well as you put them on. And you meet probably the third major character in the game, Clazier, yeah. Clausier.
They very kindly give you a small pronunciation guide. So it's Revachol, Aranya, and Clausier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And you have amnesia. You can start talking to her, and it's up to you how you do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can say that you're a police officer, or she tells you rather that you're a police officer.
Yeah.
Kind of gives you the basics. You can actually like hit on this person.
Mm-hmm.
And this would end up happening. So before I vibed with the game, when I thought this was going to be a churlish joke fest for the entire time, I was like, okay, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Like I don't like sex in video games, which spoiler, you cannot have sex in this video game.
Right.
But I don't like that, but I was like, let's see what happens. And I passed the check, and it was just, she's like, oh, it would make sense that you would want that. Like alcohol is, ups your testosterone.
Yeah.
And you drank a lot. And that was it ended up cluing me in almost earlier than I would have ideally wanted that checks are not mind control.
Yes.
Like, it's not like I passed a persuasion check. This person has to do what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Clausia is really interesting. I like that she is the first person that you meet, and she ends up being kind of the fulcrum on which the mystery hinges, and having much more of an agenda than she first lets on. You don't even really know her name. You just kind of refer to her as Miss Aranya Disco Dancer. And she's kind of this hip, almost like mod looking kind of person. M-O-D, not M-A-U-D-E. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I never saw her as like particularly hip. Like, I think she's supposed to look very strung out, like Nancy, like Sid and Nancy.
Yeah.
Like just really, really used up.
Yeah. Maybe it's the bangs and her, like her, I don't know, like body type that made me think like she was supposed to be, or maybe like her clothing. I got like a real like Margot Tenenbaum kind of vibe off of her.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was definitely thinking Nancy.
Yeah.
Like I was definitely thinking drugged, the reason why this person knows me is because we hung out because we're both drugged out failures.
Yes.
Even before I found out she was a drugged out failure.
Yeah. So. If you fail that check, she says, wow, I really, really pity you. Do you need help?
Yeah.
Which is, not necessarily the best thing for somebody's self-esteem.
No, but it is a theme.
Yeah. Oh, and you take a psychological hit on that. You lose some health on it. Yeah. Yep. But like while you're talking to her, when she says, you're a cop, this is the first time your authority speaks up and demands that you assert yourself. Authority is always waiting there in the wings, looking for somebody to disrespect you and prompting you to squash it immediately with, outsized non-proportional force.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And this was similar to you. This was the thing I did not listen to most.
Yeah.
It's also, it should be noted, this is a pretty nonlinear game.
Yeah.
You technically have a time limit, but it's very generous. I think it's 10 days. I ended up beating it in 5 days. So before like a major character died, I just ended up reading it.
Yeah.
I wasn't rushing it. It's just how it worked. So we're talking about today in this episode, all day one stuff.
Yeah.
We may not get to everything, and not all of the stuff has to happen on day one.
Right.
It is actually entirely viable to ignore your quest for a couple days. Don't start investigating the murder. Don't do any of that stuff. It's fine.
Yeah.
The game still allows for it. So.
Yeah. So you talk with her and you part on whatever terms you're able to part with. And just in case the tie, talking to you didn't indicate what was going on here, you can inspect an ashtray on one of the tables on the mezzanine up here, and electrochemistry, pops in. This is your physical addiction, primarily urging you to drink, do drugs, and have sex.
Yes. Yep. And telling you information about those things. So if you need to know what a drug does, electrochemistry is that part of your body.
I thought electrochemistry was going to be really one note. There's a particular electrochemistry line. If you pass a check much, much later on, that was one of the most poignant things in the entire game for me.
Nothing is particularly one note in this.
Yeah.
Even like authority ends up having some use and some, again, it's what saves Kim's life.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a conflict between electrochemistry and your stick in the mud, volition, and it starts one of your first quests, one that I never actually completed, to find and smoke some cigarettes.
Oh yeah. The straight edge cop. that I ended up playing because it just, again, I don't want to do drugs.
Yeah.
I have no interest in drugs. That's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not a cool leftist enough. So I don't do drugs.
I forget what the name of the straight edge thought is. It's like the wasteland of like the wasteland of the present or something like that.
Yeah. There's something like that. It did not make one of the things, this is not a ding on this game at all, but it did not, I did not feel like I suffered from not doing drugs. All I suffered from was electrochemistry kind of like nagging me every once in a while, but there were no like withdrawal symptoms, anything like that. Like this game is not trying to model addiction.
Yeah, I was surprised that it didn't attempt to do that. Actually,
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So you get your whole clothes set up. You go downstairs and kind of look around. The good music starts that I definitely used for this part. Leading into the actual game section.
Yeah.
And you meet your partner Kim Kitsuragi. We'll talk about him as there are kind of revelations about him, but still waters run very deep.
Yes.
With him. And he asks, like, do you have your memory? And you can lie. And I have long said that lying is the mark of good role-playing games. Not having a truth bot who just says honorable but good things is what elevates like good games writing from bad games writing. And in this one, you can lie. I typically didn't in this because I got the sense that it was kind of fail forward and it would be okay.
Yeah.
I did lie strategically for cop stuff later.
Yes. Yeah.
But I was definitely open with Kim about like, I don't have my memory.
Yeah.
He initially just chalks this up to your alcoholism, but also he's incredibly stoic.
Yes.
He is actually a little shaken by this if you persist in it. But he never shows that he's shaken.
Yeah.
And you kind of learn a little bit about your murder mystery, like why he's here and why ultimately you're here.
Yeah. And, he explains, we've got some tasks. I also confessed that I did not have my memory because I figured it would be better to have him on my side than to work against him on this. I did not trust I would be able to pass the checks, to convince him that I had all of my marbles still. But yeah, like we have these tasks, but first and foremost among them right now, at least, is to get the body down from a tree. I have been here for about a week, since this murder that is the instigating event of the game, and the body is hanging up there and bloating and stinking kind of in the center of town.
Yeah. Ruining the neighborhood.
Yeah. Bringing down property values.
Bring down property values, but also they wring some real great like poignance out of that as well. Yeah. Super good. You talk to the cafeteria manager who looks like a Kickstarter portrait, even though he's not. And he says that, you ask him about the body. He says there's an employee named, like he wasn't there. He manages many hostels.
He wants you to know this. I manage many. I'm not a bartender. I am responsible for many bars.
Yeah, exactly. Authority stat in the sky. But he says, the employee that was on duty during that time, Sylvie, might have some information. And then says like, listen, you caused a lot of damages here in the last couple of days. Like you owe me this money. This is where the kind of degree of your amnesia comes into play. Like it's not just that you don't know your name and things that happened. You don't know basic concepts. It's like weight bait. You need Zan to send you the learning tapes with like, what do they call that?
Yep.
It's literally that Tim and Eric sketch. So.
Oh God, Zan. But yeah, but you get an encyclopedia check, to figure out, okay, do I have money? Okay. Why do I need to pay him for this? Oh, you need a place to stay. What is a home? I can respond to that and say, like, I don't really care what a home is. And this is where I got my first thought. I could put into the thought cabinet. I could decide whether or not I wanted to be a hobo cop.
Yep. Also one of the capo types.
Yes. Like not the preferred nomenclature, but there are benefits to it.
Yeah. Yeah. This was my second. I had the expression as the first one, the disco guy, but there are different kind of ones, and you only have one slot.
Right.
At first. It's pretty funny, when he asked me to pay, upstairs you can find a handful of change.
Yep. He won't take it.
We should, I was like, is this money?
Yeah.
He's like, no. We should talk about the economy of the game, because that's kind of a general thing. Again, mechanics are important. This is a video game. You have to worry about paying rent. Like you need to come up with a certain amount of money per day. You find this either through plot events, through pawning things, which you have to be careful what you pawn because sometimes things can be valuable later, or through collecting terror. You can pick up a yellow garbage bag and start collecting bottles and cans everywhere and trading that in just to make your $20 for rent.
Yeah, 10 cents at a time.
Yep, 10 cents at a time. Like, eventually you can find a cheap or free place to live and take up on that. This also plays into bribes. Like, when we start talking about the corruption of the union, there's a very hilarious scene where they initially send you a bribe and they do it in the most ostentatious manner. It's very, very funny.
Yep.
So money is important. And this is, not only does this drive that part of your game, like your brain, like the strategic, kind of, I'm going to save up for something I want part, which is great.
Yeah.
It gives you something to do while you're exploring.
Yeah.
Like looking in things and shuffling for containers in a normal video game that will feel like a dumb distraction. Since this one is all killer, like that ended up functioning as the minor parts where my brain rested.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to pick up these cans. I'm in the room. Like, it's a little bit of compulsive gamer behavior, but I'm not being asked to think about anything.
Yeah.
While I do this. And it ended up being really, really important in terms of downtime for me.
Yeah. It also characterizes this neighborhood really well. Just the idea that there are bottles and stuff laying all over the place. The fact that you never really kind of run into, more than a handful of change in a given spot where somebody might have like stashed it away. The fact that like one of the things you can do is ask for money and everybody has an explanation for like why times are really tough. Why else would I be here? Things like that.
Yeah. Even though a lot of people will give you money because you're asking for a bribe, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
And not doing that is how you get on the honor cop thing, which I did not become an honor cop. I want to for my next playthrough though, because at one point you shove your thumb up your own ass to prove how honorable you are. And I don't know how that comes about, and I want to read about it.
Yeah.
I want to see how that comes about. So it's definitely going to be a role-playing challenge next time I play, because I don't, I was not into the honor cop options.
Right.
But I will do it I'll do it for the cause.
Yeah. Like not even Kim is an honor cop, really. Like he's,
Kim is horrified by it.
Yeah.
Like he's like, surely you're not going to do this. And you're like, no, I'm honorable. And you like, I just read about it. I didn't actually do it, but it's pretty incredible.
Very good. Oh, geez. So while you're here, you can talk with Lena, the cryptozoologist's wife, and you can bring up your amnesia. Like, I was just very open with my condition with people, and they were much more accepting of it than I expected them to be. And this is where you get a little bit of like a lesson. You can ask about the town. You can learn that Ravachol is ruled by these foreign powers. And if you know what democracy is, you can ask her like, hey, so like, is there democracy here? She says, well, yeah, but it's like market driven, ever since the revolution failed. So learning these small little details. Yep.
Go outside. The car that initially woke you up, that brought your lizard brain out of slumber is there. This is Kim's police car. Kind of a rarity. Like, not everybody has a car in this area. It is a nice car compared to the rest of the cars.
Yeah, it's Kim's pride and joy. He is a real gearhead.
Yep. And this is important for two reasons. One, you get your tools out of this. The game has this very simple tool system. A flashlight, a pry bar, and a pliers that you can have equipped to allow you to do certain kind of checks.
Yeah.
The other thing is this is how you radio back. And you can radio back. It radios to Kim's precinct by default. This is how you can talk to Sylvie, but you can also connect it to your precinct. And this is where you kind of learn a little bit about your reputation here.
The dialogue when you kind of say to them, "Come on, guys," just like when you explain what's going on, and they are laughing at you and mocking what a fuck up you are. Like that fired my mirror neurons. It was like, oh god, just give me a fucking break. Like, this is a real problem. Laughing at it isn't fixing it, you monsters.
Yeah. Even that, like, again, the climax of this game, like, I love how that is kind of recontextualized. Yeah. At least at least it was for me as a Harry Redeemer.
Yes.
As somebody who turned my guy into a good guy. But the reason why they're laughing at you specifically is that you lost your badge and gun. which is a huge deal.
Right.
Kim asks you for your badge at some point. You can also call and be like, I want to get some basic information, and your skills will say like, that information would be on your badge.
Yeah.
And you can ask the person, the dispatcher, like to read it. And they're like, well, we can't do that over the air. Like, do you have access to your badge?
Right. It's so funny. But it's a real problem that you don't have your badge. Like, people will not trust you. Like there's some things that you cannot do until you find it. And the fact that you have your gun floating out here in this world where guns are a rarity, like basically any of your skills that could cause you to feel guilty about that. They make you feel guilty. Like, it paints a picture of like a kid finding it and accidentally shooting himself. It runs through every single one of these PSAs.
It's also, this is one of the things the game, I think, does not actually, it communicates this through a tooltip, but I don't think it communicates it super well in game, is that a lot of these quests are not like a typical role-playing game quest where you just go do the thing.
Right.
These will stretch out over days. There are things you were not able to do until, for several days.
Yeah.
So this actually threw me a little bit because I'm like, okay, got to get my badge and gun. And ended up wasting some time.
Yeah, chasing specifically after that.
Looking around for things I could not get. And ultimately, these are not as crucial as they could be. I never got my gun.
Oh, wow.
From this. I started kind of the quest for it, but I never finished it because, failures and because I didn't want to. And ended up getting a very funny line in the end because of that. So we'll talk about that next epo.
Yes, we will. But yeah, your the people at your station, they call you Dick Mullins. This would be like, people calling you Dirty Harry or something like that. Dick Mullins is just this, cop in literature who is, known for being this super detective. Obviously. Well, I mean, at this point, it seems like they are being sarcastic. We're going to learn later. They kind of mean it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we'll get to that. And this is probably a reference to Nick Mullins.
Oh, yeah.
The dirtbag leftist Twitter guy who has some problematic elements.
Yeah.
So they're not going to give you your gun or badge, and they won't send you any money. And when you hang up on this person, you can overhear your partner, and also your, like, a spirit decor, skill can start kind of letting you know what's happening.
Yes.
There. Like, that is a very weird skill specifically for reading cops' minds anywhere in the world. It allows you to read Kim's mind a lot of the time, but you can also know what's happening down at the precinct.
Yeah.
And they're just like, what if, somebody's like, hey, give him a break. Maybe he's actually gonna try to get better. And your old partner, Jean Vicmer, says, in the past, he said he doesn't want to get better. He just wants to get worse. Like, this is a lost cause. Yeah,
like you have, eventually sunk down. Like later on, there's a conversation like, oh yeah, no, you're a loner cop. Like that, like that's the last stage. When a alcoholic cop is when you do not want to work with anybody. You're a hermit cop, I think is what they called it. Yeah, and that's ultimately what you are, or what you have become. Prior to this. You can, after this, okay, like, yeah, they're not going to help me. I can follow this lead. You can radio Sylvie, the girl from the hostel who we think called in the murder. And again, more guilt. She actually quit her job because of how you behaved during the week you were there. You were waving your gun around, drunkenly talking about suicide, throwing taxidermy birds at the wall. Yeah.
Putting your gun in your mouth and telling people to dare you to pull the trigger, like really abusive shit, right?
Yeah.
And this is, you can have the creeping realization, depending on your skills, that this was you.
Yeah.
And this started my long journey of being ultimately sorry cop.
Yeah.
Because learning about all the horrible things that I had done made me feel legit bad.
Yeah.
In this game.
Even down to like just a detail they pulled, a story beat they pulled from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. You decided to see how bad your room could get.
Yep. Cause the thing about a Hunter S. Thompson is you would never ever want to know them or be friends with them or think about them or look at them or anything.
Right.
Like if you had the, if you had your druthers, no one wants to be around a Hunter S. Thompson.
No.
Like that shit is so sad. Like, man, like a 45-year-old man who acts like that is the saddest shit that's ever been.
Yep.
Do not do.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you kind of get some more insight on this night, this really horrible night. You find out that you clogged your toilet. She had to with your ledger. All these things that you've done. And she basically gives you very little information, lets you know that she did not actually put in the call.
Right.
We assumed it was her because she was on duty, but she did not, because the union might get might get her in trouble. They actually have to approve everything. And you can say, to Kim, is that true? And he's like, in practice, yeah. We actually have very little power here. We're not going to get back up. We're lone operators.
Yeah. And in fact, we learn later on, we were only sent here because both of our precincts, even though we technically would have jurisdiction over this, nobody wants to actually police this place because of the union and because of, the different factors in play here.
So go to the backyard. Look at the body.
Yeah. So we go back and we see we go back and see our dangler here. You can get to get into the backyard of the hostel through a fence that has been conspicuously knocked down by a speeding car. What's that?
Driven through.
Yes. Yeah. It's been driven through, and you can follow the tire marks, points away. 3 guesses about who did that. And you go into the back there, and we get the scene of the dead body, hanging from a tree. And this little red-headed street tough gremlin named Kuno throwing rocks at the body.
Yeah. While his friend, Kuno S, very funny, watches. We have to talk about Kuno.
We do.
For a moment. Kuno is a major character in this, and again, in the off-putting characters who are actually sympathetic. The kind of John Darnielle style heart at the seat of these fuck-ups. But the thing about Kuno is that they make his voice so effectively grating that I had a really hard time with Kuno.
Yep.
And I put more points into figuring Kuno out to retry checks than anything in the game.
He's really hard. You can lock yourself out of so much with him by picking a choice that you don't even realize is going to have that kind of consequence.
Yep. When Empathy Kuno showed up. That is when I ended this game with an empathy skill of 9.
Oh wow.
Which is ludicrous. But I was I gotta get that Kuno.
Yeah.
Gotta understand Kuno. He is really throws around a lot of slurs.
Yeah.
At you. He's just throwing rocks at a corpse, and the corpse is hanging bloated and is wearing power armor boots. It's a really striking scene.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
And they're so hostile.
You walk into a scene from Gummo.
It's very Gummo. Really nasty. Talks, they threaten you and stuff. And, one thing I noticed pretty early on was Kuno S was the person leading this.
Yes.
Which ends up being the secret of Kuno, which is really interesting. Their relationship is pretty great.
Yeah.
In terms of interesting. Not
and it's definitely not healthy. Kuno S has some real problems, and Kuno is very concerned about her, and for her good does not want to alienate her. Because he is genuinely afraid of her as well. But
you get to solve Kuno, you don't get to solve Kuno S.
No.
As far as I know.
That she requires a little bit more artillery than you can bring to this.
Yeah.
Kuno is a delinquent. He's a 10-year-old drug addict. He's a speedhead who has a shrine in a little shed that's nearby. This is the best thing that's happened to him so far, is having a corpse to throw rocks at. And he only refers to himself in the third person. And the thing that he says most often is, Kuno don't care.
Yeah. Kuno don't fucking care. It's this very high-pitched, activated voice. Thing. As you start kind of interviewing them, eventually they'll start screaming rape. At this, and you can be okay, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And stop talking to him. But he'll be out here basically all the time.
Right.
Doing this, and ended up being a way more important character than I thought. He's in the second tier easily. Of important characters of this. So you start inspecting the body. Most notably, it is hung by a cargo strap, which implicates the Union. And seeing this and the smell, you throw up. I think this first throw up, I know this is a check as well. This is a body check. And Kim says hey, get some ammonia. From there. He mentions that the gardener might have some ammonia. There's also a convenience store across around the corner. The gardener, who is no gardener, will give you ammonia, which gave me a bonus, but I still couldn't do it. I still puked.
I think it was on my 4th try. I eventually had to start putting points into endurance, which ultimately paid off later on for taking damage. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But like that was a huge hurdle to get over, was even approaching the body to get a good look at it. And Kim is extremely sympathetic about it while also being firm. Like he can give you the inspiration, like he'll say like, oh, get your shit together. Like if I can't be candid with you, partner. Like you can only do this when you get your shit together. Like the hangover can't be helping you. Like you've got a lot going on. A body is bad enough for, me, somebody who's been around it a lot. And this unlocks the thought, the volumetric shit compressor, which, completing this will actually take you a long way toward being able to clear the check to get close.
Yeah. And it's a really short time limit on that. Like Kim even says, like it should take about a half hour.
Yeah.
And it does. So he wants you to go walk around.
Yeah.
At this point, this is, the next note you have. I didn't do this until later. But there's a dumpster there as well. You have to go get the key from the, Kickstarter backer portrait, that's manning the bar and several bars, to root around there. And, this is where the victim's jeans and shirt, ended up, as well as a coffee cup, a broken coffee cup.
Yes. A broken racist coffee cup. So this opens up another, kind of, question. We need to figure out who messed with the crime scene to, hide these clothes that were pulled off of the body.
It's worth noting, like, I think we mentioned this in generalities, but I just want to underline it. This functions, this is cerebral and heady and funny and surreal. It also functions really well as a murder mystery.
Yeah.
The actual just nuts and bolts, like, investigation and murder gameplay of this is excellent.
Yeah.
And the number of sensible red herrings, like, I was very satisfied with the first several twists, and by the time it did an intentional kind of out of nowhere twist for the end, I had transcended to looking at this in a deeper way. So where I ended up like really liking that actually.
Yeah.
A straight read is possible and fulfilling for a large portion of this.
And we'll talk about it when we get there, but it has the thing that I love in any mystery story where it seems that all is lost, but then something comes in that connects to, elements that you previously wrote off as being disparate.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Very well
and
structured.
Specifically, there's somebody has like the 10 rules of mystery or whatever, that's a thing that exists. This game specifically subverts a bunch of them.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah.
As part of their goal for that thing. And it does not end up feeling cheap just through kind of like overall quality, I feel like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we're going to need to figure out who, messed with this stuff. But, doesn't end up being the important lead, but of course you need to, chase it down. But this
we don't know that.
Well, yeah.
At this point. It would make sense for the person who murdered to try to hide any evidence or something.
Yeah. But something that we can, interact with, you go into your inventory is this ledger, which is, a big old ledger attached to a clipboard that has a compartment in it. And this is yours. Like
we get this from the dumpster.
Yes.
It's not just in our inventory. This was specifically thrown out after we tried to flush it.
Right. Yeah. Sylvie, is the one who threw it away because it was, covered in toilet water.
Covered in shit water. Yeah.
Yeah. but yeah, you find this here and you can use your logic skills specifically to try and discern what is in here, to try and learn a little bit about your past as a detective, and try to figure out, what work you have done on the case up to this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is all also stuff I didn't do until way later.
Okay.
Which is really interesting. It's just surreal for me, to do this, because there's also stuff I probably did on the first day that is like going to be at the end of our next episode.
Yeah.
When you do so, you can see there's a hologram on the clipboard, which will activate in light. So you can turn on the headlights, Kim's car. And, this reveals perforations that are kind of like your notches on your belt as a cop. You've been on the force for 18 years. You've closed over 200 cases and you have 3 confirmed kills. And you can ask, like, that's actually a really, good number of cases. That's well above average. It puts you in the top, like, 90th percentile.
Yeah. Like, you really were a super cop. Like, you were the Mullins here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kim is impressed. And you can decide how to react to the idea that you have killed 3 people. Like, you can talk about that aspect of the job with Kim. You can get into the clipboard itself. You find a couple of different things. You find 2 tickets to the zoo. And you have a postcard, and this throws up a red alert specifically for Inland Empire, kind of your intuition skill, your instinct skill, that says, do not read this. All of the skills that are trying to, stop you from learning about this painful thing in your past, will, urge you against it. But when you do read it, you see that it's from a woman. It's this love letter, and you have options to stop. But if you keep going, you black out.
Yeah. Yep. You black out. Kim revives you later. Like you're in the car, gives you back the ledger. Like he doesn't really know what's up with it, but this will be a continuing theme through the game. Like someone did you dirty. And probably sets you a little bit on this, not entirely. Like this game does not let you off the hook.
No.
Like it's not like, an evil woman turned you into a failure. Like this is a game where responsibility and being an absolute shitbird with tons of failings is a big part of it. And it's not like easily explained.
Yeah.
But when you think about your past, it is traumatic for you in a literal sense. It hurts your hit points.
Yes.
To do so.
Yeah. Like literally your heart is damaged by it. And you can go in, when you figure out like how you cataloged your cases, you can learn a little bit about some things that you've, solved in the past. We don't have to go over all of these. What I really like is the fact that as you are reading them, you can make decisions about how they went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And what kind of like surreal cases you've already done.
Yes.
Which opens this game up to a nice prequel.
It does.
Whoever wants to do that. Like I would do episodic prequels of all these cases.
Same. Yeah. But like the square bullet hole murders, like that's never solved. And like at the end, if you pass this esprit de corps check as it's doing the, fade out over the city, like you'll get a little scene described to you of somebody loading a square bullet into a square chamber. Like, I don't know, it's cool. I like that quite a bit.
Cool surreal image. Yeah.
So, there's a quest that's available here that you can do as you are talking with Kuno. And you can do this if you are, waiting for your shit compressor to get together. You can learn about Kuno's family.
This is a result of a pretty tall empathy check.
Yeah.
This was the thing I kept putting points into. So you can do it here. It's fairly unlikely. There are a lot of things you can do throughout the game that will make Kuno soften up to you. Different conversations you can have with him that will make this more likely to open itself.
Yeah.
But it is if you talk to him and you get his background and kind of learn about him, you learn early on that his it's not really Kuno, it's Kuno S.
Yeah.
Who is kind of egging him on and making him a shit. And getting him to open up without her reveals like a little bit about his home life. About his dad.
Yeah.
And he says like, my dad has so much speed. He's the toughest guy in town. If you can, break into the place, I'll tell you where it is and we'll split the speed. But there's a weird kind of like sad lionization of his father. Like, that he's not a good person at this point, but he is like, my dad's fucking tough.
Yeah. And I avoided this for a little bit. Like this is, I put this here earlier than I actually did it. A, because I wasn't interested in getting the speed. And B, I wasn't really interested in going up against the toughest person in, Revachol. And so I thought this was going to be a far different quest than it actually is. But like when you get into the bedroom or when you get into the apartment, you see what kind of squalor Kuno lives in. And, there's like a real kind of like recognition, for your character, for the cop, when he sees that Kuno's dad is this horrible sight, 60 years old, fat, passed out under a mountain of clothing that, a lot of it is like stuck to him by bodily fluids. His eyes are open. He is so drunk. And he's completely non-responsive. Like this is not a person who is going to be a threat to anybody.
He's basically turning into Master Willem at this point.
Yeah.
But for alcohol.
But there's nothing really to do. And even the score that Kuno talked about is just like a little bit of speed residue at the bottom of a vial. You know?
Yep. Real big anticlimax.
Yeah.
At this point. When you get back to Kuno, you can give him the drugs, or not. And your skills will say like you can't fix Kuno.
No.
You can fix Kuno. We'll talk about that next episode.
Yeah.
You can actually give this kid a good life. I did not do it, but there is a way to do it, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
But he says basically like, yeah, I'm going to become as tough as my dad. I'm going to follow in these footsteps. And it's real sad.
Yeah. What you decide to do with the drugs will have a huge impact. Giving him the drugs will make him be very, very upset with you. I didn't want to give a kid drugs. And the game even says, if you betray Kuno's trust, that's irreparable. You're never going to go back. So.
Yeah. Yep.
So he is left there throwing rocks at the corpse.
Yep. I ended up becoming friends with him, but he was left there, hanging out. And my ending, I still have to do my alternate ending where, he gets saved.
Yeah.
So we go back to we can go back into Whirling in Rags, the hostel, and just kind of look around at this point. Like we're waiting for our shit to get compressed and we're still exploring the town.
Yeah.
This is very overwhelming at first.
Yeah.
The town is actually not that big, but there are a lot of things to do in it.
Very dense.
Again, in modern CRPG ways, this reminds me a lot of Tides of Numenera. When you first get here, it's like, oh, there's a lot of very interesting people.
Yeah.
To walk around. So just kind of like things that will pay off later. I mean, go talk to the cook, who's involved in like a little side quest, but you can't share you don't speak the language. But the main thing you notice back here is this, big blue steel door.
Yeah.
It's locked. Gart, the Kickstarter portrait does not have the key. He's never been in there, so we cannot get up in there.
Yeah. It's a big mystery. And it's set up as a quest that never got resolved for me, actually. None of the doors in Whirling in Rags opened up for me.
Yep. I think that I don't know that you can actually open them up. I think that you are just supposed to intuit what they're used for.
Yeah.
When you have the false conclusion about the mystery.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right outside
plausible deniability.
Of course.
Sorry.
Outside of the hostel, there's this big traffic jam, actually, because of the strike. All of these truck drivers, these lorry drivers, I will probably never call them lorries again. So please forgive me here, are stranded, and you can talk to some of them. Like one of them seems like a pretty cool guy. There's another one who is just completely racist, and he straight up like says a racist slogan to Kim, who is coded as Asian, coded as somebody who is not from here. Obviously this is a different world, but, Kim resents the way that this truck driver is just openly treating him as lesser than. And I tell him to go fuck himself.
Yeah, me too. I can't pretend to like racist.
Nope.
In a video game. I'm fooling myself that I'll ever do that as a role-playing challenge.
Nope.
Kim is like the land he's from is, like a combination, I think, of Japan and Korea.
Yeah.
Seoul. Something like that.
The fact that he has a French accent made me think he was coded as Vietnamese, actually.
It might be Korea and Vietnam.
Yeah.
It might be the two. Like the name of the area has Seoul.
Yeah.
And like the capital of. But so this guy's a piece of shit. He is actually a pathway towards getting some information that can be very useful and stop you from doing something immoral later. But I had made an enemy of him, and I wasn't tough enough to punch him in the face. So like. This guy was close to me basically. It
was pretty fun because like every check that you have after you tell him to go fuck himself, it has a negative modifier, which is go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Yep. I did not have the right tact, for this. We can also probably quickly dispense with the convenience store, which is right outside.
Frit.
There's not a lot going on there. Yeah, Frit is your shop. This is where you turn in your tear. You can buy a raincoat and you can buy medicine and beer.
Yes.
Here. You can actually interview the clerk, but she's not super useful.
Yeah. Just a bored teen who was not invested in the job. Yeah.
Yep.
Because they pay her
certainly
shit.
Not invested in the murder.
Yes. Yeah. You can go back, you can, by talking to Kuno, again, learn that he is afraid of how unstable Kuno S is. Kuno draws attention to this, roofing material that is over against a nearby building. This is actually hiding his little hideout, which is the back way into the Union space, like up into the docks.
Yeah. Nobody can get up into the Union because of the strike. There are scabs out there waiting who are kind of yelling and agitating, who are a little bit fishy. And if you go up and try to actually get into the union thing, they say, oh yeah, you can just walk in. You just have to get by Measurehead, who is a gigantic beefcake of a man who's staying there shirtless, kind of intimidating everyone.
Yeah.
I did not get this info from Kuno. I just went into the door.
Oh yeah.
Just move the widow aside, to find his little nest, which allows you to go up onto the roof.
Yeah.
And bypass, as we mentioned.
You can pass the savoir-faire check to to very gracefully jump from one level of the walkway to the other and grab your cloak, like your policeman's cloak that's up there. It was unlikely. That might have been a natural 12 that got me to succeed at that. I had nothing in savoir-faire, so.
Failing it is really funny. You run up to it and you stop at the last second.
Nice.
And you're just too scared. You take mental damage from being scared of like falling.
Oh yeah. But yeah, you can walk around through the shipping yard. It's completely still. Again, work stoppage. You can talk to this worker named Leo, who is very polite in a sing-songy way. He is actually out here wrapping the green containers, covering them with red wrapping to, kind of signify like, yeah, this isn't Wild Pines anymore. This is the Unions. And he gives you a couple of other, details talking about the Union, like, oh yeah, our leader is Everard Clare, and his brother Edgar, who are identical twins. And the only difference between them visually is, that one of them has a lazy eye.
Yep. This is also where you learn about Miss Beaufort, which is Everard, put her through school to become the union lawyer. We'll meet her later. She's important. Yeah. We can actually go in and talk to Everard now. And this is a dialogue boss battle.
Yep.
This is, he has you sit down in this chair that is incredibly uncomfortable.
You can die in this chair. You can have a heart attack because the chair is bad.
Yep, I definitely died in the chair at this point. This was a bummer because I hadn't saved. The game doesn't autosave very often.
Right.
So I had to go and do all of the stuff, the check to get on top of the roof and talk to the other guy again. So it's like, a minor. They definitely should have saved when you entered this room.
Yeah, probably before a big encounter like that would have been preferable. Yeah.
But Everard is great.
He's so good.
He is so slimy, and you learn through if you have the correct skills to learn about him. It's like he has the kind of gregariousness where you can no longer tell what is true and what's not.
Yeah.
From him, like he is so overwhelmingly and disingenuously friendly that it is impossible to know. What's happening. And he is power playing you left and right. One of my favorite jokes about it is he immediately gives you a bribe, and it's in the form of a giant novelty check.
Yep.
So you will be seen carrying it out of the thing from the union leader. Like he does it so he shows the cops are on his payroll by having a big Price is Right, novelty check. That is so fucking funny.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And I took it because I didn't know, I literally did a role-playing thing because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
Like the Gart told me I needed $20. I don't have it. I've been picking up change. It was before I found the tear bag.
Yeah.
So I was just like, fuck man, I guess I'll take it.
Yeah.
I need the money.
Yeah.
And you can try to give it to Gart directly, and the disdain and disgust he has for that is just an amazing moment of sorry cop shame. Just absolutely incredible stuff.
I'm so happy that you did that because I turned it down. I was like, no, it probably doesn't. I don't know all of what's going on here, so it probably doesn't make sense to throw myself in with you just yet. So I turned it down, cause I didn't want to owe anybody anything, I guess was my, was my stance on it. That is really funny that it's a huge check.
It's really good. It's a very funny joke. You can talk to Kim about it, at some point, whether, is this a bribe? And, he'll be like, well, no, we're actually allowed to take donations. We just have to document them.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a thing you can be nervous about having done it. And then I don't know if this opens it up, but I was able to ask everybody for money in a bribe sense. Like Kim would get a little cranky, but I could just be like, do you have any money for me? And I didn't do it. But that is one of the things that unlocks the, ultra liberal. Because when somebody asks you why you ask for money, you can be like, oh no, I'm just always grinding.
Oh, yeah.
And if you say that enough times, then you become a libertarian, money-focused monster.
What a nightmare. Yeah.
What a nightmare.
Like Everett's character is really great. What I like what they do setting him against Joyce, the Wild Pines representative, because I am sympathetic. I have the union sympathy, for this, but it is presented in such an unsavory and compromised way that like everything about it is as oily as possible.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, just like there is going to be corruption in any organization of any size, right? Especially a large union that eventually just becomes another kind of management, right? And so you deal with it and you have that dissonance, and the dissonance is mirrored and echoed when you talk to Joyce, who represents, a monstrous force in the world, but is personally, affable in a very genuine way. I love that dichotomy between them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's power playing you. Like he keeps mentioning your lost gun.
Yep.
He has a lot of intelligence on you, and he also keeps insinuating he knows a lot about the hanging and he would like to help you.
Yes.
And that happens a lot. Like characters say they know a lot, to get you to do things in a way that again feels sophisticated because not everyone's being straight with you because they're not all truth bots who say the king lives in the castle.
Yes.
So one of the things he says, he keeps saying your name, like you don't know your name during this. He keeps calling you Harry, Mr. Harry Dubois. And this actually turns out is a version of your real name. You can talk with Kim and kind of figure out how he might figure that out. And Kim guesses it's census records.
Yeah.
How he did that.
But he wants you to do him a favor. He says, yeah, I can tell you stuff, but really I've got all these problems. It's really taken up a lot of my time. You could resolve this. Go here and just open this door. Just open somebody's door. Which is very clearly, it's pretty easy to pass the check and realize, oh yeah, that's intimidation. There's somebody who they want to find their door open and understand that the union is after them or has their number.
Yeah. And the police work for the union, basically. So you can kind of leave at this point. He confirms that the hanging had to do with the strike.
Yeah.
Which you could know because he's pretending like he's giving you information, but it's all stuff you already know.
Right.
And as we mentioned, if you try to get in the other way, you talk to Measurehead, who is the race scientist, racist. And if you say like, tell me more about the comparative differences between races. And he starts going into this whole thing about how there are alpha and beta races and then like lower level races. And it's all really disgusting stuff.
Yeah.
When you have the option to go along with it to get in, which is a way to get in, I think, Kim will give you a side eye, which is my recipe to not, or, my signal not to do anything.
Yeah. Kim is a good moral compass.
I'm not going to disappoint my good boy.
Yeah.
And I don't want to pretend to be a racist.
Well, no, it sucks.
Game definitely allows it. You can also like punch this guy, but he's incredibly tough.
Yeah.
One of the things that a future playthrough is I want to try playing like a body cop. Who can actually go around like dispensing two-fisted justice. Because it was so contrary to how I actually played, where like stubbed toes almost killed me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you can decide to go and do this task for the union. There is a way to do it without being compromised, without technically like gathering corruption points, but I did not really figure that out too much. But yeah, you can actually, when you're leaving through the office, you can go through some of the files, going and pass a volition check to overcome your boredom and, learn a couple of special things, including the special whirling borscht. This is a little side quest where you can find out that the union has an agreement with with the cook at the Whirling in Rags to pour a bunch of vodka into the borscht, and you can go and like mess with the ratio of how much booze all of them are getting.
Yeah, to either make them more ornery or cut it off.
Right.
I'm boring, so I cut it off. It should be noted real quick that this is not his office. This is not Everett's office. It's the union office on the way back.
Yes.
Everett's not just like watching you look through his files.
Yeah, yeah. But you talk to one of the people at the front gates here, somebody whose name is, call me Manana. And he gives you the door to the basement. This is out behind the greenhouse, back behind the Whirling in Rags. When they find the door open, they'll understand what's up. You can go and open the door and then leave. I think that doesn't compromise you. I was very curious, so I wanted to go inside. I'm happy that I did. This belongs to a character that you meet later. And it helped me learn like what fascism is in this world, because this is the home of a big old racist.
Yep. This is racist place. And I went through, even if you're just, justifying this yourself, this is very close to the crime scene.
Yes.
And also I was not drowning in leads at this point, so I definitely looked through as well, stole their clothes and, found a set of mugs, missing one spot and having like racist caricatures of all the different races except for the one I found. Yeah. So that's no good. When you return to Everett, he'll talk about the case. He says, Wild Pines sent 3 mercenaries to break up the strike. One of them got drunk and violent and suicidal. That's the victim. And he says, like, that's basically all I can tell you unless you do another favor for me. Right. He gives you another task. But he says, you can go talk to one of my boys. They'll probably be in tomorrow. Titus and the Hardy boys. Yeah. His name is Titus Hardy. Yeah. And I will talk to them and get them to be more cooperative, which gives you a bonus when you're doing the dialogue boss battles with Titus.
Yes. Yeah. You can pull rank on him. You've gone over his head.
Yep.
Yeah. He doesn't trust me enough to give me my gun yet. It's very funny because you can get the information without him. He is not holding as many cards as he has led you to believe.
No, he's manipulating you.
Yeah. He alludes to what this next task is going to be. We're not going to be able to talk about this till the next episode, but they're trying to build a youth center in the fishing village nearby. And you need to get some signatures, but, somebody broke the canal lock. Whenever somebody did something that resulted in damage, it was you.
Yeah.
So,
which is it's really nice to not like something I think about a lot is outsmarting media.
Yeah.
And how I feel good that I don't generally have that instinct. And one of the things I was thinking about with this was like, at some point I knew it was always me, but I did have one of the big ones I had. It was a surprise. Like I didn't put it together. So I got to feel along with my character, the like creeping dread.
Yeah.
So, but he wants to go to the signatures. That's a little side quest. You can't do that yet. You can't get over there. The game really wisely, gives you one section of town at first and then opens up the other half.
Yeah.
A couple days later, game starts on a Monday. Yeah. And it'll be 2 more days.
Yeah. So around this point, if you have decided to do the stuff that we had talked about, you have more than gotten your shit together, at least enough to go make another run at inspecting the body. There were other things that we intended to talk about this episode, like things you could possibly do on day 1. Those will come next time. As we record here, but inspecting the body is a huge deal because you get very important information.
Yeah, you're solving this crime.
Yeah.
So it's very important. Like this is super unstructured, like the order in which you do any of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's this is not in any way prescriptive. In my playthrough, I didn't end up talking to the union boss until I was trying to get the body down, and that's why that was my motivation to talk to the union boss. So you get back to the tree, you can see that there are footprints on the ground, and you can learn about all the people that are here. There are 8 people, and you check their boots.
Yeah.
And do some good ass detective shit. Like, this person was very light, is either a woman or a child. This one was very heavy. This one, boot has one sole of the shoe is more worn than the other. At this point, there's a really funny, inside joke here where you can, or Kim makes a joke about it being a drummer. At this point, and you can go along with it, and then you can do a callback of that like days later.
Oh, that's great.
And in public to somebody, and then Kim takes responsibility for putting the idea in your head. It's very funny to like embarrass him for daring not to be straight laced with somebody who is amnesiac. So.
Yeah, really God, I just trying to think of like, technologically what you have to do to keep track of that and have it pay off. The level of difficulty that of the task that they managed to do, keeping all of this stuff straight is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a different kind of sophistication, like as opposed to modeling physics or anything, it is modeling a really complex series of Boolean like strings.
Yeah, all of these dependencies. I mean, to deliver what is ultimately something that is not important, like a callback. Yeah, but it's, it's huge. It's this canary that tells you everything is being kept track of.
Yep. So, the same thing with the apes duking it out on the surface. Like when my limbic system was telling me about that when I was passed out, I brought that up in the climax of the game, and it was not important.
Yeah.
Up until that point.
Yeah. So. Very important. I made a guess that ultimately ended up being, partly true. Like, oh yeah, the uneven shoes maybe belong to a driver. We could, it's worth checking that out. And this is where I passed the endurance check, to get close to the body. It's hilarious when you throw up because it's the same animation every time.
Yeah.
Because I threw up like 4 times. I don't know. Seeing that all over again was very funny. But yeah, you get close and you can, take a look. He was wearing, conspicuously these, ceramic boots. This is part of a suit of basically power armor that he was wearing at the time of the murder. Apparently, but it's been scavenged because it's very expensive. And Kuno probably saw, something about this, probably saw people trying to take stuff away. Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Cause he's a little shit. You can also kind of start a little like, I want those boots.
Yep.
Kind of thing. I ended up getting the boots, in this, which is not really worth it, but you can, look at the boots and be like, I want that. And try to pull them off. They are desiccated and fused to the body through like mung dripping down. It's very disgusting.
Yeah.
You see where he's hanging, this industrial strapping, this reinforced polyester, and you see that he has all these tattoos, on his corpse. It looks like a star chart there. Kim has a Polaroid camera. It's called something different, but it's an instant camera. So you can get that deciphered later. It becomes a piece of evidence you can inspect, in your inventory in this game. There's clothing, tools, things you can inspect, and then kind of miscellaneous stuff you're just hanging around.
Yeah. Did you get this Inland Empire check to interrogate the body?
I did. I did talk to the body.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Like you can talk to it. Like you can go into this mind space and he says, I was a joke and a motherfucker just like you. Which, ultimately ends up being pretty true. And he asks why you're doing this. And one of your options, when you're talking to him is to say, because something is coming. This is what got me on the Cop of the Apocalypse track. The shivers. I love this. What Shivers says, something is on its way, something hidden. It's coming, a miracle from the Northwest. And it's almost here. You can feel it in the air on your hands, the cold spring air smoothing them over. Yeah. Good shit.
It's weird. There were like a lot of options to just say that Doom was coming, but I did not see anything that evidenced it's Doom.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking that it was something that was like, oh, okay, that's what the game's really going to be about. Like there's going to be like a Night in the Woods-esque, apocalypse thing.
Yeah.
In the offing. But you more or less, like there is the climate change metaphor thing that is the supernatural threat.
Yeah.
But you more or less will it into existence.
Yes.
Again, when you talk about Torment or, and bringing up Torment in this, like this is like a game that is made entirely of a Dawn.
Yeah.
From Torment. Like there's a name you can claim as your name and it becomes your name if you just say it enough. Like people start believing that's you.
Yeah.
Same thing with this, like saying like, hey, some Doom is coming makes it so you can start talking about that and makes people believe Doom is coming.
Yeah. My concept of the Doom when I started talking about these things was basically more of a societal thing because we were existing kind of like in the collapse of all these systems that did not work, and ultimately it became, as I leaned more into it, it became about that metaphysical kind of deterioration.
Yeah. It's not a role-playing thing. It's weird. Right. It's like, it's referring to something specifically that comes in pretty late to the game. Like you can learn about it a little bit early on from the bookstore, but you don't actually get an idea of it for quite a while. So,
yeah. One of the things you can learn is that, by talking to this, that the victim was sexually aroused at the time of death. And you can actually order a test. Like you can get a semen analysis to figure out like what was the deal with that.
So you have to get the body down. You've done all the things you can do while it's up. You look at the buckle and you can say, we can shoot this down. Kim tries and he misses. Kim is a really bad shot. He's incredibly nearsighted.
Yeah. And like people who wear glasses are discriminated against in this. They're called binoculars, something like that. And Kim wears very thick glasses. He only like barely passes like his firearms exams. And you can choose to make a shot yourself, even with your DTs. I made it
a
happen.
hand-eye coordination test.
Yeah.
I did not hit the buckle. That's why I had to go talk to the union. The union will get them down for you. They send Measurehead to go do it.
Yeah.
But if you shoot it, that's how you learn about high fives, right?
Yeah.
Aces high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You get the idea for aces high.
Yeah.
So you're just thinking about high fives. When it falls, you can check in on the body and still talk it, and you say like, "What killed you?" And he says, "Communism pulled the." He's like, "Love killed me, but communism pulled the trigger."
It was love did me in, but communism killed me.
Yep. Which will pay off later.
Yep.
And you can kind of talk to Kim about this case. I had done this earlier, but learned that we're from different precincts. They're basically having a pissing match.
Yeah.
They sent 2 cops basically, to companions of Xanthus. And we do a field autopsy, and I am so in the pocket for like procedural shit like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't like cops in real life. I understand it's a bad cultural moment for them.
Mm-hmm.
Procedurals though are still really interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I really, really like this kind of Sherlock Holmes intuiting past events from physics kind of things.
Yeah. It's like, it's watching people solve a puzzle in real time. And like, what's great about this instance here is there is incomplete information that you have to commit to, if you fail the checks because the form needs to be filled out and the body needs to be processed. So, you can identify if you don't pass a particular check, the wrong cause of death for this, specifically because of the marks that the strapping left.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a lot of like little bits here that will also pay off. Like for example, so the way that the scene happens is Kim is doing the autopsy and he's dictating to me. So like one of the things is Kim guesses the age and he says 50. And I had a check that's like, he's not that old. Like that's just what it looks like when you party hard.
Yeah.
So I wrote, despite Kim, I wrote a lower age and it turned out I nailed it. Like I knew exactly it. And then later there's this incredibly poignant echo when I find out my actual age, and it's the same thing. Like I look incredibly old, but I'm not as old as I think I am. There's more time left. Like I am not as lost to cause as I thought.
God,
that was so incredibly resonant and good.
Yeah.
It was so fucking like, what a joyous moment. Mm-hmm. You're not as old as you think you are.
Stay of execution, old man. Yeah.
Yeah. What a kindness, and just having having a mirror with me and this victim, because there are a lot of similarities between you and this victim. And specifically me kind of going to bat.
Yeah.
For the victim. And that ended up being a theme throughout solving this entire murder.
Yeah.
Was like just a little bit going to bat for this guy. Like this person not being the scumbag that he seems like ended up being really, really emotionally resonant to me.
Yeah. You mentioning that line about how you have time, I'm not being dramatic. I got goosebumps on my arms thinking about that again.
It's really good.
It's so effective.
It's one of my favorite moments in the game. Like, and just because it's this like little tiny dot of good, just absolute hope. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, again, this very hopeful game. Like that's where when I compare it to Vonnegut, that's what I'm getting. That's the writing style is not very Kurt Vonnegut-like.
Right.
It is more about the belief in the inherent goodness and kindness of people, and that is the greatest good you can strive for.
Yes.
And that is at the heart of this game in a way that like is just incredibly my alley.
Yeah.
This autopsy scene is great. I ended up learning a lot. I did not actually find the specific cause of death, but I also said, we cannot tag and bag him. Mm-hmm. So I ended up putting him in the freezer in the basement of the commercial district so I could look at him later.
Oh, I didn't get down there that early. So I never found the freezer. I was like a jackass. I went into the Whirling in Rags and like, no, you're not going to keep that body next to our food. And then then they said, go check with Frit. And I went to Frit and their freezer is like just a small little ice cream freezer. Like, it's not going to hold a body.
Yeah. Yeah. There is an appropriate freezer for it, but a lot of things can change based on the order.
Yeah.
You do that, man. When you eventually do send the body away, you can do it now or you can do it later. Kim will be gone for the day. Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting thing too. Like there are things you might want to do without Kim there and things you have to do with Kim there. So you have to kind of manage when he's not around. Yeah. I loved Kim so much that I waited until the end of a day to send him away when I had nothing on my docket that I needed him for. Yeah. But this, for me, this was, when I did this, which was on day 2 is when I got the body down. I went and took it to the basement freezer.
Gotcha. Yeah. There's a check for the real cause of death. This person, like any good murder mystery, died in a different way than was apparent. We'll talk about what that actually was, next episode, when we get there, because the front of this is very important. I think this is how I ended my first day. I was real eyes on the prize pretty much, for getting this. We should probably say like time does not pass when you're walking around. It only passes when you're interacting with things or talking with them.
And time really matters. Yeah. People go to bed. It takes time, obviously, for the thought cabinet. Mm-hmm. And people will be around at certain times. Like people, as we mentioned, the union guys don't show up to the Whirling in Rags until Tuesday.
Right.
So you can't really pursue that just yet. You can see the area where they hang out, but they don't actually show up there until later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's end the first day.
Yeah. So I went and I tried to cash that giant check, and he laughed me out of the place. I had to go cash it at the convenience store.
Okay.
To pay for my lodgings for the night. Mm-hmm. There's a nice little. I read about this. You got it. This is how you did it the first night. But Kim will pawn some things that he confiscated for his car. Yeah. And our boy Kim loves machines. Mm-hmm.
And specifically, like his wagon, his motor carriage is his pride and joy. And it's very fun that even though he is incredibly straight-laced, he does have this, like he did commit this kind of corrupt act. He arrested this politician's extremely high son who was driving under the influence. And he confiscated these spinning rims. And he was going to put, he was like, trying to decide if he wanted to put them on. And you can even you can ask him like, hey, or you can say, I'm real sorry that you had to pawn these things that you really liked. He's like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. It would be ridiculous to have those ostentatious things on a cop car, but it was nice to, entertain it for a while. It was a very, it was a very humanizing moment for Kim, kind of early on in the game for me.
It's also a thing where I think he's lying about not feeling bad about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like he would have liked to have done it.
Yeah.
He's, between, a spirit decor and, empathy, like you basically read Kim's mind.
Yes.
All of the time. And there's a lot of things that he plays up that image of, being more straight-laced. Like he is in conflict with himself.
Yeah.
Which is part of why he's such a good character.
Yeah. But to get the money, you have to go to the pawn shop. You could have come here earlier if you were trying to raise money just by selling, things that you might have found. You can't sell as much as you think. But when you're there and you get the money, you can also ask the pawn shop owner, Bird's Nest Roy, who is standing in his bulletproof chamber, high on drugs and vibing out to projections that are happening on the screen or on his walls in the shop there. He tells you, yeah, you came in and I didn't want to buy the gun. And when I wouldn't take it, you sucked on the barrel until I did. You psychopath.
Yeah. No good.
So the only information that we have about the buyer, it moved pretty quick. It was a woman, and she called herself a pig, which made me think that it might have been Kuno S, actually. It's not, but later on, Everart's men came by and asked about it. Like, oh, they don't know where it is either. So yeah. I don't need to work with them to get the gun. That's good to know.
Yeah, they. I think that when I talked to Everett, he said he was looking for it, not that he had it. But he had leads and stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually, again, I don't know the pathway towards getting the gun. Did not get the gun. Yeah. Got other guns instead. So you can sell, we talk about selling things just, real quick in due diligence. The thing I wanted to be able to sell was clothes, but he won't buy clothes.
Nope.
The safe thing to sell is postcards. Postcards are just flavor.
Yeah.
So everything else has a use though. So if you didn't listen to our advice and you're still planning to play the game, sell postcards.
Yes.
You made a plan when you talked to Kim, when you talked about your memory. He says, well, maybe we should debrief the case at the end of the day. So when you get to the end of the day, before you go to bed, he gets a neighbor room to you, in the Whirling in Rags, and you go out on the balcony where he has his daily cigarette and, talks about the case and, the police.
I love what electrochemistry says about his daily cigarette. saying like, oh, it'd be so much easier for him just to not smoke. Like, it takes a huge amount of willpower to just have one every day.
That kind of masochism is pretty good for his characterization.
It becomes very important. There's a good payoff for that later on that highlights a particular moment in the story. But yeah, you can get a rundown basically on what the RCM is, this Revachol Citizens Militia, mostly about the limitations of your power and what you can do. Like, really, all that you have the ability to do is impose fines on people, out here, and then direct cases to judicial. And it is really contested whether the citizens of Revachol imbued you with this power, or whether it was imposed on the citizens here by the coalition government that basically reformed this country after the revolution was squashed.
Yeah. Yep. This is also where we can learn about Dolores Day, who is this kind of thinker, this almost like, deified, or actually deified. There are churches to her as this kind of humanist deity. There'll be a lot of payoff for that later. Yeah. This is where we learn that Kim used to fully subscribe to Moral Intern.
Yes.
And now he doesn't really see it. He believes in the police, he believes in trying to help people, but not in the actual systems around it.
Yes. Yeah. And Kim says, you can talk, frankly about the situation here in Revachol, that this is kind of just a corner of the town that nobody really wanted to take responsibility for. Again, he called it a puddle at the end of the drain pipe. And you can basically get him to say, we failed. We failed this place, by not coming here. We left this orphaned. And at this point he says, I still believe in the system, even though it led to this outcome.
Yeah. You get to choose when you want to go to sleep. Very mercifully, the clock stops at 2 a.m. Yeah. So you can't, if you want to read or do anything like that, it's a good time for it. You also always wake up at the same time.
Yeah.
Regardless, because you don't, spoiler, you don't sleep very well. Just in general, but you definitely don't this first night.
No.
Where you have this nightmare sequence, where you walk into the hostel where the man is hanging, but instead of, hanging, the hanging corpse, it's a hanging you, and there's a disco ball over it. It's like this brilliant surreal image, where you argue with the dead version of yourself.
Yes.
Basically a huge self-pity party.
Yeah. She's gone, your friends are gone. This is a new kind of hangover. This isn't just the regular kind. It's time to go work in the shit factory.
Yep. And that's roughly where we're going to leave it. Today. I'm getting the anxiety that I get from Watch Out for Fireballs when I know we're not covering everything.
Yeah.
Because it's a big, complicated game. Like, for example, when you're shooting down the body, you can point the gun at Kuno S.
And get a non-standard game over.
Yeah, there are 18 non-standard game overs of this, where you kill a kid, and it's like, well, you don't do that.
I'm like, yeah.
Even if she's the worst, you don't kill her. Just all these little things that we miss. So we're going to try to hit as much as we can, with our one playthrough each.
Yeah.
And the next episode will be likely pretty spicy, and we'll be talking about the rest of the game. Hopefully. We will see what we get through.
Yeah, it's big. It's big. And, the motivation to be complete is not just for completeness sake. All of this is very good. It's hard for me to think of, something that I would feel comfortable completely omitting. Because it's integrated. It works in service, and it paints a larger picture. That I kind of just want to soak in, because this is a truly remarkable game.
Yeah, same. There are things that I didn't do. I tend to like these games most in the act of playing. When I don't try to see everything. If I'm just kind of I want to role play it, and what happens. That's my story.
I don't want to run down a list.
Yep, I think that's the way to play it. But now that I've gotten through it, and it's been sitting with me now for a week and a half, I really want to see the stuff I didn't see.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through with some auto saves and play forward at a couple points. But even with that, there's stuff we're going to miss. There might be interesting stuff if you go down the race science path.
Yeah.
Not for me to know. Who's in the audience of this game who's there are races that are better than others. There are A grade races and B grade races. This makes sense. I don't know who's doing that. Somebody.
Yeah.
But not me. And So there will be some things we miss, but we're going to try to do our best.
Yeah.
This game could literally probably be a bonfireside chat-esque like mini series if we wanted it to be. Like, we could do 6 episodes on this.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe not 6 3-hour-long episodes, but 6 episodes.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So, if you're playing along, you know, again, we encourage you to experience all of this for yourself. But hopefully our analysis is bringing some light to you, showing some of the stuff and maybe a way you didn't see it before. So, yeah. Next,
if you have comments.
Yes. If you have comments about this game, you have until the 15th.
Yeah. And also if you have comments about Devil May Cry. Will it be as narratively rich? Time will tell.
Yep.
So, and that's the 15th, as always, 15th of August. That's our premium episode. That will be, just there for patrons. If you'd like to join us, which we strongly encourage you to do, you can go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and, just kick us some money. $5 gives you a bunch of old episodes, early release, a bunch of just full shows. We think you get a lot.
Yes.
For that $1.25 per week. So
yeah, so go check it out. See what is on offer. If you have thoughts about September's games, which are Lords of Magic, the special edition, Plants vs. Zombies, or, drum roll please, God of War 2018. There we go. I forgot what the third one was. The deadline there is the 15th of September. And please write those in at duckfeed.tv/contact. If you have thoughts about multiple games, please separate them. It makes it much easier for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts are very appreciated. Many people came out in force to do that recently, and that's very nice of you.
Yes, thank you.
Duckfest 2 audio will come out at some point.
Yes.
Stay tuned for announcements.
Yeah, the plan is to have it out this week.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's probably about it.
Think so.
Yeah. So until next time, what should people watch out for?
Watch out for the Shit Factory.
Yeah. Lizard Brain. It's not on your side.
No. Oblivion.